Chapter 1446. Very well. I also want to know whether Gongsun Xianyuan, the leader of a mere tribal alliance, is stronger, or I, the real first emperor who has unified the world, is stronger. This Xianyuan sword is just the right weapon for me to use against Gongsun Xianyuan, Yingzheng said proudly. In his eyes, he was already comparable to the Yellow Emperor Xianyuan. But this was also Yingzheng's usual temperament. Then let's fight. Guhan smiled and unsheathed the Xianyuan sword in his hand. Alas, what a pity! Such a good palace, such a good Yuzhong city, will be destroyed by the two of us again. Yingzheng looked at the palace that he had spent 12 days to build and said with regret. It could be seen that Yingzheng really liked this palace. Don't worry, this palace will be fine. Guhan said, Oh, it seems that you and I are thinking the same thing. Let's go outside the city and fight. After saying that, Yingzheng broke through the void and was ready to go out of the city. No, I think you have misunderstood me. Guhan shook his head and said, What I mean is, I only need one sword to kill you, and it won't hurt a blade of grass or a tree here. You. Yingzheng was stunned at first, then all the blood in his body rushed to his head, and his eyes turned bright red. Yingzheng thought that he was arrogant and savage enough, but he did not expect that Guhan was even more arrogant and savage than him. I've said it before. The reason you could kill me just now was because you shamelessly launched a sneak attack on me. If I had concentrated and used my full strength to fight you, do you think you could still kill me? This emperor will crush you into... Before Yingzheng could finish his words, and when everyone was curious about what else Yingzheng was going to say, another head the size of a castle flew up and rolled to the ground, creating a large pit. Then it bounced up from the pit, rolled a few times, and finally lay quietly on the ground. Sorry, I was wrong. Killing you will still hurt the flowers and plants. Guhan looked at the back of the figure and the huge crater created by the head, and said with some pity, One sword, another sword. Oh my God, if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I wouldn't have dared to imagine it. In fact, when Yingzheng said that he was beheaded because of Guhan's sneak attack, the crowd felt that it was quite reasonable. It was true that the sword strike came too suddenly, and before Yingzheng could react and defend himself, his head was chopped off by Guhan. It was a very normal thing. Therefore, most people accepted Yingzheng's explanation and thought that there would be a fierce battle between Yingzheng and Guhan, and the battle would last for 3 days and 3 nights before the winner could be decided. But when Yingzheng, who had already had one head cut off, was beheaded again, the crowd finally realized that Guhan's strength had reached a terrible level. Oh yes, they did not know if Yingzheng's head would grow back again. Sure enough, Yingzheng's head had grown back once again, and the 2 heads that were chopped off earlier were still rolling on the ground. Their eyes were wide open, as if they were staring blankly at the world. Until the moment when the 2 heads were chopped off, they had no idea how they were chopped off. Guhan, you are despicable. Can't you wait for me to tell you to start before we fight? Yingzheng's head grew back for the second time and said the same thing at the same time. But no matter how one listened to this sentence, it sounded full of grievance, like a pitiful child. All right then, I'll give you 10 seconds to get ready. I'll count down from 10, and then I'll swing my sword and kill you. You must be ready this time. Guhan smiled, and there was a hint of doting in his eyes. Oh, doting was a terrible adjective. Hey, Yingzheng said no more. His body began to make a booming sound, and then all the muscles in his body bulged, making him seem to have expanded by 2 or 3 times. It was as if he had transformed from a normal human into a world champion bodybuilder. At the same time, a layer of faintly discernible earthy yellow light began to shine on the surface of Yingzheng's body. At the same time, the earthy yellow light was the most concentrated on Yingzheng's neck, and there was a faint feeling that it had condensed into a substance. Isn't this the ability of Ho Tu, virtue carrying thick soil? One of the immortal sword bearers exclaimed. After fighting with the 12 Zuwu for 3 years, they had a very clear understanding of the 12 Zuwu's abilities. The earthy yellow light that Yingzheng had condensed on his body was Ho Tu's unique skill, virtue carrying thick soil. Among the 12 Zuwus, Ho-Tu was the one with the strongest defensive ability, and this skill, virtue carrying thick soil, had raised the defensive ability of Ho-Tu to the extreme. It was said that this skill could gather all the defensive ability of the earth on Earth into Ho-Tu's body. In actual combat, no human had ever broken through the defense of virtue carrying thick soil. Even when Ho-Tu was killed in the end, it was only during the cooldown period when Ho-Tu's skill was exhausted. Otherwise, with the enhancement of virtue carrying thick soil, no one could hurt her at all. And obviously, the reason why Ying Zheng could possess Ho-Tu's ability was because he had eaten the blood pearl of Zuwu. Ying Zheng had indeed gathered the power equivalent to that of 12 Zuwus. Come on, if you're not afraid of breaking your sword, come at me. After using the skill, Ying Zheng immediately looked at Gahan and said in an extremely arrogant manner. With the defense of virtue carrying thick soil, Ying Zheng did not believe that Gahan could still chop off his head with one strike. 0. At this time, Gahan's countdown finally reached 0. At this moment, everyone's hearts were in their throats. They did not know whether Gahan could break through the virtue, carrying thick soil that had left everyone feeling helpless and unable to attack. The earthy yellow light of virtue carrying thick soil was still wrapped around Ying Zheng's neck, but Ying Zheng's head had already flown up again, and this time, it flew higher than the previous 2 times. It took 7 or 8 seconds before it fell from the sky, and finally, it smashed directly onto the roof of Weiyang Palace, the main hall that Ying Zheng had prepared to hold the court meeting. The entire Weiyang Palace was smashed into pieces, and at the same time, a pair of blank eyes were left behind. The 3 heads fell in different positions, and then looked in different directions, which had a peculiar charm to it. This is a little too strong. This is the defense of virtue carrying thick soil. Countless sword-bearers said in a daze. They could not believe that the virtue carrying thick soil, which had once made everyone feel helpless, was actually broken by Gahan with one strike. No, Hongjun Jindi did not break through the virtue carrying thick soil. Don't you see that the earthy yellow power of the earth is still on Ying Zheng's neck? I can feel that the power of the earth contained in the virtue carrying thick soil has not changed at all from beginning to end. A voice sounded in everyone's ears. Everyone quickly looked in the direction of the voice and saw Long Shi Jindi, who was old and could only rely on the support of 2 people, appear. Your Majesty, you finally come. When everyone saw Long Shi Jindi appear, they said with some surprise. Since 12 days ago, when Ying Zheng announced that he was going to establish a human empire, Long Shi Jindi and Frost Jindi had not appeared in front of humans again. Some people said that these 2 Jindi were killed by Ying Zheng. Some people said that these 2 Jindi were imprisoned by Ying Zheng. And some people said that Long Shi Jindi and Frost Jindi had already ascended to immortality. In any case, these 2 Jindi didn't have a good ending according to everyone's guess. Until now, when Long Shi Jindi appeared, everyone let out a sigh of relief. It seemed that these 2 Jindi were all safe. Your Majesty Long Shi, long time no see. Junior Gahan greets you. Seeing Long Shi Jindi appear, even the incomparably arrogant Gahan took the initiative to bow to Long Shi Jindi. No need, no need. In this lifetime, I was able to see my little friend Gahan come back safely, and also to get rid of the scourge Ying Zheng for humanity. Even if this old man ascends to immortality today, this old man can die in peace. Long Shi Jindi grasped both of Gahan's hands and said with incomparable excitement, "The heavens have pity on me." This old man thought that this old man would become the sinner of humanity, the sinner who pushed humanity into the abyss of Ying Zheng. The heavens have pity on me. You have come back. Humanity can finally be saved. Humanity still has a future. This old man knew 20 years ago that sooner or later you too would be the ones to save humanity. That's great. Long Shi Jindi's eyes drooped with 2 drops of turbid tears. At this age, with this experience, and having experienced so many things, Long Shi Jindi, who should have completely lost his tears, once again shed tears at this time. One could well imagine the excitement and joy in Long Sure Jindi's heart. The two of us? Guhan stared blankly for a moment, and then immediately reacted. He asked with some urgency and some fear, "Your Majesty Ling, she won't? How do I say this? I can't say yes. I can't say no. I can only say that she still has one breath hanging in her throat." Long Sure Jindi sighed sorrowfully. She's just a little girl, but now she looks even older than this old man. This old man has let her down. If this old man had believed her earlier and imprisoning Zheng with her, she would not have ended up like this. Really? It's good that she's not dead. It's good that she still has one breath hanging in her throat. Hearing Long Sure Jindi's words, Gahan heaved a long sigh of relief, as if he had finally let go of something he had to choose. At the same time, Ying Zheng's head also grew for the third time. Goo! Ying Zheng's mouth opened. Noisy, Gahan's mouth closed. Ying Zheng's head flew up again. Chapter 1447. Will Ying Zheng's head keep growing out like this? Watching Gahan chop off Ying Zheng's head for the third time, Long Sure Jindi's face twitched, and then he asked with some fear. If Ying Zheng's head kept growing out, wouldn't Gahan have to chop it off here for the rest of his life? Isn't this a little too terrifying? I don't know. Gahan shrugged his shoulders. You have to ask Ying Zheng himself to know, but you can't keep chopping off like this. Long Sure Jindi felt even more pain in the ass, and then he suggested, wouldn't it be endless? Why don't you not only chop off his head, but also chop his body into minced meat? I don't believe that his head will grow out again. It's okay. Chop it off first. I don't believe that his head can't be chopped off, Gahan said with a smile. At this time, Ying Zheng's head just happened to grow out again. Gahan, you can't do this. Let's have a good discussion. Well, before Ying Zheng could finish his words, his head flew off for the fourth time, and then a large building that he had planned as a harem was smashed into pieces. This made the onlookers, who hated Ying Zheng to death, feel a little sorry for Ying Zheng. This child was really too pitiful. Before he could finish his words, his head was chopped off. Otherwise, Ying Zheng would have finished his words. The sword-bearers couldn't help but feel deeply sorry for Ying Zheng. It was really too tragic, seeing Ying Zheng's head fly off again. Long Sure Jindi's body couldn't help but tremble. He pursed his pale lips, and then asked Gahan with some fear. Gahan, forgive this old man for taking advantage of my seniority, but I'm curious, to what extent is your strength now? 12 days ago, this old man clearly saw Ying Zheng's strength. One punch of his was equivalent to the strength of 27 Zhu Wus, and now you can kill Ying Zheng with one sword strike. Then your strength is... What is my strength? Actually, I don't know either. After all, I haven't met an opponent who can force me to use my full strength, Guhan said with a smile on his face, and his words instantly made all the sword-bearers who had pricked up their ears to have their hearts almost jump out of their chests. Even when facing a formidable opponent like Ying Zheng, Gahan did not use his full strength. So, what kind of opponent would deserve Gahan to use his full strength? Everyone, don't misunderstand. Looking at the horrified faces of the surrounding sword-wielding men, Gahan shook his head and said calmly, My strength is not as terrifying as you think. In fact, all of you have been deceived by Ying Zheng. Ying Zheng's strength is not what you think it is, which is equivalent to the strength of 27 Zhu Wus. In my opinion, I'm afraid Ying Zheng's current strength is even weaker than an ordinary Zhu Wu. Even if you're Master Long Jindi, if you were allowed to regain your youth, perhaps you could also kill this beast. What? It could be said that everyone was shocked today. Never in their wildest dreams did they expect to hear such a sentence from Gahan's mouth. Ying Zheng's overall strength was actually inferior to even Long Sure Jindi? That was impossible. Brother Guhan, are you sure you're not mistaken? All of us have seen with our own eyes that Ying Zheng's attack is equivalent to the strength of 24 Zhu Wus. Moreover, when he attacked those immortal sword-grade sword-wielding brothers, our brothers were also killed by him without any ability to resist. His strength is indeed so formidable. How could he be inferior to me? Longsure Jindi said in disbelief. This is just the strength that you see. Gohan looked at Ing Zhang's head that was about to grow out again, and the corners of his mouth curled up into a sneer. Yes, in terms of pure physical strength, perhaps Ing Zhang has indeed reached the strength equivalent to 27 Zhu Wu's, just as you said. However, this is a strength that he simply cannot control. You only saw the might of his one punch, but you did not notice that his body has actually become very uncoordinated, and his movements have also become very stiff. The improvement of strength should be comprehensive. Strength, speed, and reflexes should all be improved at the same time. However, Ing Zhang seems to have only improved his own strength, so that his punch can reach the strength of 27 Zhu Wu's. But in other aspects, it is exactly the same as before, without any change. That's why his movements seem so stiff. At this point, Gohan was once again defeated because at this time, Ing Zhang's head had grown out for the 5th time. Gohan, my head is endless. It's impossible for you to kill me. Let's have a good discussion. Why don't we divide our territories into states from now on? Asia, Europe, and Australia will all be yours, and the rest will be under my rule. Ing Zhang finally finished what he wanted to say this time. But that was all, because Ing Zhang's head flew up for the 5th time and smashed his imperial kitchen to smithereens. Moreover, I think that Ing Zhang may not be able to control his own body anymore. Gohan nonchalantly took back his sword, and then continued to discuss with Longsure Jindi. Gohan, why do you have such a guess? Longsure Jindi's face twitched uncontrollably. This was the first time that Longsure Jindi had encountered such an atmosphere of chatting while beheading people's heads, and it really gave people a very subtle feeling. Your Majesty, think about it. With Ing Zhang's character, after being beheaded by me again and again, shouldn't his first action be to escape? Shouldn't he escape as far as possible the moment he resurrected, instead of talking nonsense with me here, saying that he intends to divide the provinces from me? Moreover, if I were Ing Zhang, I would certainly not let my head grow out again. After all, being beheaded is not an interesting experience. A somewhat mocking smile appeared on Gohan's face. Then could it be like this? Is it because Ing Zhang has taken too many Zhu Wu blood beads in one go, so he hasn't digested the power of these Zhu Wu blood beads in a short time, so that he is unable to control his own power? Longsure Jindi had begun to accept Gohan's statement, and, at the same time, he also put forward some of his own speculations based on Gohan's statement. How would I know? He has to ask himself. The tip of the Xianyuan sword in Gohan's hand trembled, because Ing Zhang's head had grown out for the 6th time. But this time, Ing Zhang no longer spoke but stubbornly raised his neck, looked at Gohan, and had an expression that said, I have nothing to say, you can just cut off my head. I will die a heroic death. It seemed that poor Ing Zhang had accepted his fate, and at the same time, lost the will to resist, and could only rely on Liu Hulin. But this time, Gohan was not in a hurry to cut off Ing Zhang's head. Instead, he strolled in front of Ing Zhang and looked at him. It was a somewhat funny scene. A lone giant was standing in the palace, and a human, who was as small as a mosquito to him, was standing in front of the giant. It stood to reason that the giant should have killed the human with a slap, and it was natural for the giant to decide the life and death of the mosquito. But the fact was the opposite. It was this little ant that was deciding the life and death of the giant. It was indeed a somewhat funny scene, but it also made people feel very emotional. You should have heard the conversation between me and His Majesty Longsure just now. Then answer His Majesty Longshure's question. Have you really digested the power of 12 Zhu Wu blood beads? Gohan asked Ing Zhang. Don't even think about it. I will never tell you the answer. Ing Zhang still stubbornly replied. Of course, this Ing Zhang would only face one ending, and that was his head would fly off for the 6th time. Alas, at this time, the audience was already very used to this scene. So although Ing Zhang's head had smashed the palace of Compassionate and Peaceful this time, it did not cause any waves, and no one was even interested in taking a look at Ing Zhang's head. It seems that Ing Zhang has indeed not digested the power of 12 Zhu Wu blood beads. Otherwise, with his character, he would have taken the initiative to admit it instead of shaking his head in front of me. Gahan touched his nose and said. At the same time, Longsher Jindi nodded his head. This was indeed Ing Zhang's character. It seemed that Ing Zhang really had not digested the power of 12 Zuwu blood beads. But even if Ing Zhang has not digested the power of 12 Zuwu blood beads, it is impossible for me to be his opponent. Gahan, what you said just now is still a bit too much. Longsher Jindi went back to the previous topic and said, Oh, since your Majesty Longsher has such doubts, why don't we give it a try? Gahan said with a smile. How to give it a try? Longsher Jindi asked curiously. It's simple. I won't take any action next. Let Shihua deal with him. Gahan immediately said to Lu Shihua, who was waiting respectfully on the side, Shihua, you will deal with Ing Zhang next. Remember to cut off his head like me. Yes, Master. It could be seen that Lu Shihua was also somewhat hesitant about this and felt that he could not be Ing Zhang's opponent. But since this was Gahan's order, Lu Shihua did not have any thoughts of refusing, but carried his seraphim sword and stood silently in front of Ing Zhang, waiting for Ing Zhang to resurrect again. Gahan, you have gone too far in humiliating me. When Ing Zhang's head was found for the 7th time, Ing Zhang became extremely angry. It seemed that he could really hear the conversation between Gahan and Longsher Jindi when he had no head. I have nothing to say about being defeated by you, but don't think that your useless apprentice can also suppress me. Is that so? Gahan gave Ing Zhang a disdainful look and said, Haven't you been suppressed by my apprentice for 16 years? I thought you had long been accustomed to it. You, Ing Zhang glared at Gahan, his eyes almost popping out of their sockets. Gahan's words had indeed hit Ing Zhang's sore spot. Ing Zhang had indeed been suppressed by Lu Shihua for 16 years. Otherwise, Ing Zhang would not have colluded with the ancestor of sorcerer to kill Lu Shihua. Very well. Today, I will use your apprentice's blood to let you know who is suppressing who in the end, said Ing Zhang loudly. Then, he threw a punch at Lu Shihua's head. However, Lu Shihua moved sideways and, to his surprise, easily avoided Ing Zhang's punch. Then, he slashed his sword at Ing Zhang's neck. As a result, Ing Zhang's neck flew up for the 7th time. Once again, everyone was so scared that their eyeballs almost fell out. Had Gahan's lineage become so terrifying? Not only was Master a pervert, but even his apprentice was also perverted to this extent. Chapter 1448. Master. Lu Shihua walked to Gahan's side in a somewhat daze. Longsher Jindi cupped his fist towards Gahan and congratulated him. Congratulations, Hongjun Jindi. You are already so powerful, and the disciple you taught is also so powerful. I, Longsher Jindi, really admire you. At the same time, he sighed with emotion and said with a bit of jealousy, Gahan and his disciple were both Jindi, and both of them were so powerful. It seemed that in the future, Gahan's achievements would inevitably surpass Kenzu's. Perhaps it would not be impossible for him to kill all the Yuan Kos and let the human race return to the happy time 1,000 years ago. In this way, Gahan's name would really go down in history, and he would enjoy the incense offerings of the future generations. Just like Emperor Yin and Emperor Huang, he would become one of the human ancestors that all the Chinese people, no, all the people on earth would worship together. As for himself, he was probably just a little flower by the side of this ancestor. To be able to obtain a dozen or so lines of words was perhaps his greatest fortune. Longsher Jindi thought with emotion. No, it's not that simple. Gahan's expression became extremely serious. He took a deep look at Lu Shihua beside him, and then asked Lu Shihua, Shihua, how much strength did you use just now? Replying to master, disciple really did not have much strength. It was just a probing attack, and Ing Zhang's head had already fallen off. Lu Shihua looked at the 12-winged angel sword in his hand, and said to Gahan in a somewhat absent-minded manner, No, even if Ing Zhang's strength is uncoordinated and uncontrollable, it is impossible for you to kill him with just one sword attack. There must be something strange here. Gahan looked at Ing Zhang, whose head was still growing out, and then looked at the 7 heads rolling around Ing Zheng, and an ominous premonition welled up in his heart. Just then, Ing Zheng's head grew out for the 8th time. "You go." Gohan's sword chi rolled down, and a famous sword-level sword-bearer was pulled to his side by Gohan. "Your Majesty Hong Jun, what can I do for you?" This sword-bearer was somewhat courageous. Being pulled to his side by Gohan's sword chi, he did not show any expression, but instead looked eager to try. "Go and chop off Ing Zheng's head for me," Gohan said to this famous sword-level sword-bearer. "What?" The famed sword-grade sword-wielder was obviously taken aback. Gohan actually asked him to chop off Ing Zheng's head? Wasn't this a little too funny? Wasn't it a bit too ridiculous? But when he saw Gohan's piercing gaze, this naturally courageous famed swordsman immediately nodded and said, "Leave it to me. I will definitely chop off Ing Zheng's head. Don't worry, I will protect you. You just have to swing your sword at Ing Zheng's neck." After saying that, Gohan sent this famous sword-level sword-bearer to Ing Zheng. This time, Ing Zheng's body did not even make any movement to block, and this famous sword-level sword-bearer directly approached his neck. Then, this famous sword-level sword-bearer very straightforwardly used his own sword Maiden to chop off Ing Zheng's neck. After a few seconds of delay, Ing Zheng's neck rolled down once again. This time, it was the head that rolled down. "I killed Ing Zheng. I chopped off Ing Zheng's head." This famous sword-level sword-bearer looked at his own hands in surprise, unable to restrain the excitement in his heart, and cried out loudly, "What's going on? That's impossible." Even Long Shi Jiandi began to feel that something was wrong. Even if Ing Zheng really could not control his body and did not consume the power of Zhu Wu's blood bead, he should not be so weak that a famous sword-level sword-bearer could chop off his head. "I'm afraid there's something wrong with these heads." Gohan's eyes turned cold, and the Xianyuan sword in his hand instantly slashed at a head that was rolling down on the ground. Just now, the head could have been easily chopped off, but now it had become extremely hard. Gohan's slash could only leave a bloodstain on the face of the head, and no other traces could be seen. "Ing Zheng, tell me honestly what's wrong with your head. Is your Zhu Wu blood bead in these heads now?" At this time, Ing Zheng's head grew out for the 9th time. Gohan immediately flew in front of Ing Zheng and asked. Ing Zheng opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but no sound came out. It was as if this head no longer belonged to Ing Zheng. What happened next shocked everyone once again. It was obvious that Gohan did not even touch Ing Zheng's head, but Ing Zheng's head still fell off. In other words, Ing Zheng's head was not chopped off, but it fell off on its own. This made everyone feel a strange fear in their hearts. They feared that there was something incredible hidden in this matter. "Long Shi Jiandi, I want to ask you something, and you must answer me correctly." With a solemn look on his face, Gohan returned to Long Shi Jiandi's side, looked at Long Shi Jiandi, and said, "Gohan, go ahead. As long as I know, I will definitely answer you." Long Shi Jiandi nodded and said, "Well, may I ask, when you killed 12 Zhu Wu 12 days ago, did a dimensional vortex appear?" Gohan asked in a somewhat urgent tone. "No, absolutely not," Long Shi Jiandi replied subconsciously, and then immediately reacted and asked in a somewhat trembling tone, Could it be that 12 Zhu Wu is not dead? If a Yuan Ko died, then there must be a dimensional vortex to bring him back." This was an unchanging truth for the past 1,000 years. But the battle situation 10 days ago was so intense that everyone was fighting with their lives on the line, so they did not notice the fact that 12 Zhu Wu's dimensional vortex did not appear. Since the dimensional vortex did not appear, there was only one explanation. That is, 12 Zhu Wus were not dead, they were still alive. Long Shi Jiandi was so frightened because he understood this point. If 12 Zhu Wus were really not dead, then wouldn't these heads be? Long Shi Jiandi, can Yuzhong City's dimensional wall be activated now? Gohan immediately asked Long Shi Jiandi, but Long Shi Jiandi was at a loss. He had been hiding for more than 10 days, so how could he have the time to care about the dimensional wall? He did not know what the current situation of Yuzhong City's dimensional wall system was. Destroyed, Yuzhong City's dimensional wall and the dimensional wall system in the core area were all destroyed by His Majesty, Yingzheng. Yingzheng said that with his protection, human beings would never need the dimensional wall system again. The one who spoke was Lu Yin, who had been kneeling on the ground. Even when he spoke, his forehead was still pressed to the ground, and he did not dare to raise it. You still have the nerve to speak. Lu Shihua immediately wanted to reprimand his younger brother, but was stopped by Gahan. Gahan gave Lu Yin a deep look, and then said, "Are you sure about this? Is Yuzhong City's dimensional wall really destroyed?" "Actually, it's not completely destroyed." Lu Yin hesitated for a moment and said, "I personally took down the core Emperor Zerg of the dimensional wall system and handed it to His Majesty Yingzheng. So, if we can find the Emperor Zerg and put it back on, it should be restored in 24 hours. 24 hours? Sigh. It seems that we can't count on it." Gohan's face tightened. At this time, something even more bizarre happened. Two heads grew out of Ying Zhang's neck at the same time, and then the two heads rolled down the moment they grew out. Then he counted the heads on the ground and found out that Ying Zheng had lost 11 heads at the moment. There's no time. Gohan glanced at the dense crowd on the ground. There were 400 million people squeezed into a city. Unlike the sword-bearers who knew the details immediately, many ordinary people had just learned about the sudden appearance of Hong Jun Jindi, who had been missing for 20 years. Almost everyone was squeezing toward the core area, hoping to see Gohan's face clearly. Such a crowded crowd could only lead to one result, and that was, when the battle began, the aftermath of a random battle could kill tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of people. What should we do? Long Jindi's old face became even older. He had figured out a lot of things and was well aware that 12 Zuwu would most likely be resurrected again, and the heads that rolled down were the precursor to 12 Zuwu's resurrection. And no matter how strong Gahan was, it was impossible for him to take care of the safety of so many people at the same time. Once the battle broke out here, the entire Yuzhong city would inevitably become a scene of mountains of corpses and seas of blood. Let's move these heads out at once. We must not let them resurrect in Yuzhong City, Long Jindi said excitedly. It's useless. Gohan shook his head. Without the protection of the dimensional wall, it will be easy for 12 Zuwu to enter Yuzhong City, and there will be a lot of lives. What should we do? Long Jindi was at a loss. Now that the dimensional wall was gone, wouldn't the resurrection of 12 Zuwu mean that humans could only wait for death? It's all my fault. I shouldn't have destroyed the dimensional wall system. Lu Yin, who was kneeling on the ground, cried. It's okay. I have a way. Gohan patted Long Jindi's shoulder. When Long Jindi, who was at a loss, heard Gohan's words, he suddenly felt very relieved, as if there was nothing that Gohan couldn't do. Go. Gohan's lips closed, and the 12 swords behind him flew out at the same time, flying in 12 different directions, forming a huge circle, encircling most of Yuzhong City. Open. Gohan's lips moved again, and Long Jindi was keenly aware that, at this moment, the rules of the entire void seemed to have changed. With the 12 swords as the pillar, the membrane between the void and reality was forcibly torn apart, and then a void gate surrounded the entire Yuzhong city, like a complete circular wall, was opened. Your Majesty Long and everyone, I'll have to trouble you to let everyone enter the void gate. I think as long as these people hide in the void, they should not be affected by the battle below. Gohan said to Long Jindi. This old man understands. This old man will do it. Long Jindi was overjoyed and immediately led all the sword-bearers to the crowd and began to urge them to enter the void gate. But things did not go as smoothly as imagined. When the ordinary people saw the dark void gate, they instinctively felt fear. At the same time, because of Ying Zhang's perverse behavior, many people who did not know the truth thought that this was some kind of horrible prison or something, and were struggling and unwilling to enter the void gate opened by Gahan. Seeing that the last head of Ying Zhang was about to grow out, all the sword bearers who saw this scene were burning with anxiety. The situation suddenly fell into a very bad situation. Chapter 1449. In Yuzhong City, many people had obeyed the command of the sword bearers and entered the gate of the void that Gahan had opened. But due to fear, most of the ordinary people were still hesitant and did not dare to enter the gate of the void. As a result, the whole scene became chaotic, and from time to time, there were even some stampedes. In just a minute, hundreds of people had died because of this chaotic situation. All of this made all the sword bearers who were responsible for maintaining order feel anxious. But right at this moment, Ying Zheng grew another 2 heads. Strange, if these heads really belonged to the 12 Zuwus, then why did Ying Zheng grow a 13th head? Lu Shihua asked in puzzlement when he saw the 2 heads popping out at the same time. I think you've forgotten that Ying Zheng actually has another head, so there's nothing wrong with 13 heads. Gahan said, looking at the 2 heads of Ying Zheng. Of the 2 heads, one immediately fell to the ground, becoming the 12th head to fall to the ground. And there was still another head growing on Ying Zheng's neck. Gahan, save me. This time, Ying Zheng seemed to have recovered from the state of being unable to speak just now. He opened his mouth with difficulty and spoke. At the same time, his expression was full of horror, like a chicken that had fallen into the water. However, Ying Zheng's heart was really big. At this time, he actually had the nerve to ask Guhan to save him. What the hell is going on? Can you tell me now? Guhan flew in front of Ying Zheng and said to him with a frown, "If you promise to save me, I'll tell you everything." Ying Zheng immediately said to Gahan as if he had found a life-saving straw, "You're crazy. Even at this time, you still want to make this kind of deal with me." Gahan snorted coldly. "Nonsense. If I don't make this deal with you now, my life will be completely gone." Ying Zheng replied with a wry smile. "It's up to you whether you want to tell me or not. You could decide for yourself." Gahan flicked his sleeve and said coldly. He had no intention of making a deal with Ying Zheng. I'll tell you. Ying Zheng felt helpless because he knew he had lost all his capital now. So he had no choice but to answer Gahan's questions obediently. Meanwhile, Ying Zheng's current state was revealed by his own words. It turned out that, just as Gahan and Longsher Jindi had speculated, Ying Zheng had not completely digested the power of the 12 Zuwu, or rather, the 12 Zuwu blood pearls were still staying safely in Ying Zheng's body, and had not fused with his own power from the beginning to the end. However, Ying Zheng himself was deceived by the 12 Zuwu blood pearls, because he found that the strength of his fleshly body had grown tremendously, and such a frightening growth had directly numbed the vigilance that Ying Zheng should have, so much so that Ying Zheng took it for granted that the power of the 12 Zuwu blood pearls had been dissolved by him. But, until the appearance of Gahan, everything was still normal. Ying Zheng could still freely use the power of the 12 Zuwu blood pearls, and the 12 Zuwu blood pearls were staying obediently in Ying Zheng's body, showing no signs of disobedience. But at the moment when Gahan appeared, an unusual change suddenly occurred to the 12 Zuwu blood pearls. Among them, one Zuwu blood pearl, which represented the mysterious underworld, rushed straight into Ying Zheng's brain at the moment when Gahan's sword beam appeared. Because of that, Ying Zheng's body stopped moving instinctively for a moment, and as a result his head was chopped off by Gahan, while the Zuwu blood pearl, which represented the mysterious underworld, left Ying Zheng's body together with the severed head. The fact that he could regrow his head was something that Ying Zheng had never thought of. After his head was chopped off, Ying Zheng thought he was done for. But to his surprise, he found that his consciousness did not vanish and still existed in his body. Meanwhile, the Zuwu blood pearl, which represented Emperor Jiang, was slowly growing out from his body and eventually became Ying Zheng's second head. At first, Ying Zheng was optimistic that he had gained some special ability after devouring the Zuwu blood pearl. But as more and more heads were chopped off by Gahan, Ying Zheng was horrified to find that the strength of his fleshly body was getting weaker and weaker, and he was gradually losing control over his body. It was to the extent that when the last few heads grew out, Ying Zheng did not even have the ability to speak. It was not until the last head grew out that Ing Zheng regained control over his body. But now, there was not even a single Zhu Wu blood pearl left in Ing Zheng's body. I'm not afraid to tell you the truth. When the 12 Zhu Wu blood pearls left, not only did they take away the strength of 12 Zhu Wus, they even took away my own strength. Now, I have such a huge body, and my true strength may not even be as strong as an ancient sword-bearer. I have nothing left. I'm just an ordinary man now. After finishing his explanation, Ing Zheng added one last sentence. At the same time, he put on a pitiful and miserable look. Even Lu Shihua could not help but feel pity for him when he saw this. That's right, a dignified ancestor of the human race, the famous first emperor, was now left with the strength of an ordinary human. This was indeed pitiful and pitiful. If what you said is true, then the truth is very obvious. After listening to Ing Zheng's narration, Gohan looked at Ing Zheng with pity. You've been deceived from the beginning to the end. You thought that you were the one who schemed and controlled everything behind the scenes. You thought that you had successfully killed the 12 Zhu Wus with the help of the human race's strength and stole their strength. But in the end, you're the one who was schemed against. Doesn't this sound very stupid? Gohan said mercilessly. You're right. Ing Zheng's face was ferocious at first, but all the ferociousness turned into helplessness in the end. In the end, he had no choice but to admit Gohan's words. The reason why he behaved like this was because Gohan's words had exposed the truth that Ing Zheng did not want to see the most in his heart. You're right. Based on the current situation, I'm indeed a complete fool. I thought I had the power of the 12 Zhu Wus, but in the end, I'm just a petri dish for the 12 Zhu Wus. Ing Zheng looked up to the sky and sighed. Master, what do you mean by that? Why don't I understand? Lu Shihua asked in puzzlement. Shihua, even if he borrowed the strength of the entire human race, do you really think that Ing Zheng defeated the 12 Zhu Wus with his own schemes and strategies? Were the 12 ancestral sorcerers really so weak and, at the same time, so stupid that they would allow Ing Zheng to kill them so easily with the strategy of dividing and annihilating them? Do you think that's possible? Gohan sighed and said, Master, you mean the 12 Zhu Wus were killed by Ing Zheng on purpose so that the Zhu Wu's blood beads in his body could enter Ing Zheng's body and then be separated from Ing Zheng's body like what happened today. After Lu Shihua said this, even he himself felt a little frightened. If all these were true, then the 12 Zhu Wu's willingness to pay such a great price to let his Zhu Wu's blood beads enter someone else's body, what kind of horrible truth could it be that made the 12 Zhu Wu take such a great risk to achieve his goal? You're right. Gohan seemed to have seen through Lu Shihua's thoughts and said directly, just like Ing Zheng said, he's just a petri dish. Master, then let's destroy all 12 heads now, and smash the 12 Zhu Wu's blood beads as well. Maybe we can still make it. Lu Shihua said anxiously. No, it's too late. Gohan shook his head. It was only at this time that Lu Shihua found that the 12 heads were all floating in the air, and with Ing Zheng's body as the center, they began to spin constantly. At the same time, a blood-red force was constantly passing between the 12 heads, and at the same time, a fluctuation that made people feel fear from the bottom of their hearts was being transmitted throughout the whole Yuzhong city. Gohan, save me. Gohan, save me. They're going to eat my body and soul. Gohan, save me. Hurry up and save me. At the same time, Ing Zheng's face changed dramatically again, and he began to cry miserably at Gohan, constantly asking for help from Gohan. Tears even flowed down from his eyes, and he asked for help from Gohan in an extremely sad and tragic tone. It could be seen that Ing Zheng was really scared this time. He was really facing the crisis of death. Otherwise, he would not have shed tears, nor would he cry for help so miserably. It seems that these 12 Zhu Wu's planned to completely devour Ing Zheng's body. Gohan said with a heavy expression, Then, Master, should we save Ing Zheng now? If Ing Zheng is finally devoured by the 12 Zhu Wu's, will it be another great disaster for us humans? Lu Shihua said worriedly, If I'm not wrong, this is a calamity but also an opportunity. Let's just watch his last moments. Guhan said coldly, looking at Ingzheng, whose face was getting more and more frightened and ferocious, desperately trying to resist and escape, but could only struggle helplessly, unable to even move his feet. What other opportunities will there be in this? Although Lu Shihua's heart was full of puzzlement, since this sentence was said by Guhan, it must be right. Since Master had asked him to be a spectator, then he would be a spectator. Guhan, you can't do this. You can't abandon me. Don't you want to know the situation of the black tortoise? Looking at Guhan's indifferent attitude of watching from the side, at this critical moment of life and death, Ingzheng had no choice but to take out his final trump card. Chapter 1450. Initially, Ingzheng thought that when he mentioned the name of Gu Xianwu, Guhan's expression would change drastically like before, and at the same time, in order to get the information about Gu Xianwu, Guhan would have to make a deal with him. But this time, Ingzheng was wrong. When Ingzheng mentioned the name of Gu Xianwu, Guhan's expression did fluctuate a little, but he did not say a word. However, he did not reply to Ingzheng at all. He just kept staring at Ingzheng indifferently, as if the news Ingzheng told him was not enough to move Guhan. Guhan, listen to me. Gu Xianwu is facing a very dangerous situation now. She is in a very dangerous situation now. If you don't go and save her immediately, you will regret it for the rest of your life. Feeling that his body was about to face the end, Ingzheng could only tell more information, hoping that it could make Guhan more anxious and save his own life. Master, Miss Gu Xianwu is in danger. Let's save Ingzheng. Why don't Miss Gu Xianwu? Lu Shihua also became anxious, and at the same time, he tried to persuade Guhan. No need. To Lu Shihua's surprise, although the muscles on Guhan's face twitched a few times, his expression was still calm. Instead, he calmly said to Lu Shihua, "This is just an exaggeration before he dies. Even if Gu Xianwu is not in danger, Ingzheng will go and save her for me, and he will make up a story of danger. Don't worry about him." Is that so? Hearing Guhan's words, Lu Shihua's expression became a little complicated. Although what Guhan said made a lot of sense, Lu Shihua still felt that it was not Guhan's sincere words, and the truth was not as simple as what Guhan said. It was just a lie that Ingzheng made up to save his own life. I didn't lie to you. I really didn't lie to you. Gu Xianwu is really very dangerous. Back then, Gu Xianwu, Fleeting Year, and I, Ingzheng, the three of us roamed the world, saved so many people, and made so many names. There's no one in the world who doesn't know our names. Be it ordinary people or swordsmen, everyone praises our names. Also, when the 300,000 people retreated, the gap was not discovered by the Fleeting Year calendar, but by the Gu Black Tortoise. At that time, the hero of humanity was not the Fleeting Year calendar, but the Gu Black Tortoise. The Gu Black Tortoise was much stronger than the Fleeting Year calendar, and her reputation was also greater than the Fleeting Year calendar. Fleeting Year is only the second one. At the critical moment of life and death, in order to attract Guhan to save him, even though Guhan did not agree to Ingzheng's condition, Ingzheng could not wait to tell Guhan about what happened in those years, hoping that he could arouse Guhan's curiosity and get the chance to save his life. But to Ingzheng's great disappointment, Guhan still did not move even after he had said so many things. But it did not matter. Ingzheng felt that as long as he said what he was going to say next, Guhan would definitely save him. So, Ingzheng continued, "Don't you find it strange? Why is it that the Gu Black Tortoise was the savior of humanity, but in the end, Kanzu became the Fleeting Year calendar, and the name of the Gu Black Tortoise was forever obliterated in the long river of history, and no one even knows this name? Except for people like me who hide underground, the entire human race has completely lost the name of the Gu Black Tortoise. Don't you want to know why?" Master. Hearing all this, Lu Shihua immediately turned his head to observe his master's expression, and he found that the flesh on Guhan's face was constantly twitching. From this, Lu Shihua could tell that his master had actually been touched by Ingzheng's words, but Guhan's desire to kill Ingzheng was too strong. So, even if he would give up the chance to find out the truth, he still wanted to kill Ingzheng. Master, Zheng does not seem to be lying. Why don't we save him? If Master does not want to do it, then I am willing to bear the blame for Master and save Zheng. All the mistakes will be shouldered by your disciple. Lu Shihua said decisively. No need. Faced with Lu Shihua's willingness, Gohan still replied with these two cold words. At this time, the situation that Zheng was facing was getting worse. The 12 heads were gradually shrinking their encirclement, and they were only less than 500 meters away from Zheng. Judging from the current speed, Zheng would be completely surrounded by the heads in at most 3 minutes. It's because of the Lunyan clan. It was the Lunyan clan that suppressed all news, the Lunyan clan that erased all traces of Gu Xianwu's existence, and the Lunyan clan that has been changing history for 5 consecutive generations. The mastermind behind all this is the Lunyan clan. Zheng did not dare to continue talking to Gohan, and could only shout the truth at the top of his lungs. All of this was done by the Lunyan clan. Kinzu and Fleeting Calendar were jealous that Gu Xianwu's reputation was greater than his, and that Gu Xianwu was the true leader of mankind. So, on the wedding night of Gu Xianwu and Fleeting Calendar's wedding, Fleeting Calendar ambushed Gu Xianwu when she was defenseless and broke all of her sword maidens. However, Gu Xianwu was too strong, so she managed to escape in the end. What I said is the truth. When Gu Xianwu was on the run, I was the one who helped her escape. I was also the one who gave her the place of hibernation that I had prepared for myself, Mount Changyang, so she could hide. By the way, the place where you truly rose to power is Mount Changyang. Do you think it's such a coincidence? That was decided 1,000 years ago. Zheng said something that shocked Gohan and Lu Shihua to the core. What Zheng said was indeed true. Gohan had really made a name for herself when she was in Changyang Mountain. But wasn't I Ching the one who left Mount Changyang for Gohan? Since when did it become a place that Gu Xianwu left for Gohan? After that, Fleeting Calendar kept sending people to hunt Gu Xianwu down. He even chased after Gu Xianwu for 10 years. In the end, he found Gu Xianwu in Mount Changyang. If Gu Xianwu hadn't given birth to a son for Fleeting Calendar would have let Gu Xianwu go after his son begged him. Zheng said hurriedly. At that moment, the encirclement created by the 12 heads was less than 200 meters away. However, Fleeting Year Calendar had no intention of letting Gu Xianwu go. After that shameless bastard settled his son down, he immediately sent people to kill her. It was I who found her again and arranged for her to hide in another dimensional rift in Shanghai Pass. I told her to enter the seamless corridor and use it to hide from Fleeting Year Calendar. Otherwise, she would have died to Fleeting Year Calendar's sword. What? This time, Gohan was truly shaken. If what Zheng said was true, then the Black Tortoise's final path of return was actually to enter the seamless corridor. The Black Tortoise's birth was also within the seamless corridor. But Gohan had been in the seamless corridor for so long, but he had never seen a trace of Gu Xianwu. Seeing the shocked expression on Gohan's face, Zheng felt that he had found a weakness in Gohan, so he immediately continued. Fleeting Calendar couldn't find Gu Xianwu, so he went back to slander her. Fleeting Calendar even said that Gu Xianwu was the cause of the dimensional destruction. He told everyone that it was Gu Xianwu's existence that caused the dimensional destruction. So, as long as all traces of Gu Xianwu's existence are wiped out, the dimensional destruction will disappear and humans will return to their normal lives. This is the real reason for the great cultural destruction that you speak of. Destroying all knowledge is just a side effect. The real reason is the existence of Gu Xianwu. Zheng shouted at the top of his lungs. And Fleeting Calendar didn't go missing. He went in the seamless corridor to hunt down Gu Xianwu. He is determined to kill Gu Xianwu. So Gu Xianwu must still be in great danger. Only you can save her now. Gohan, listen to me. Based on my understanding of Gu Xianwu can only be in 2 places. One is the seamless corridor, and the other is Mount Huagua. Since you escaped from the seamless corridor, Gu Xianwu must not be in the seamless corridor anymore. And since you can escape, Gu Xianwu must be able to escape as well. So, Gu Xianwu must be hiding in Mount Huagua, and in the whole world, only I know where Mount Huagua is. If you save me, I will bring you to Mount Huagua, and I will help you save Gu Xianwu. Yingjing finally revealed his final trump card, and then looked at Gahan with hope. Guhan, as long as you chop off this emperor's head and place it in your dimensional pocket, you can save my life. It's very simple, isn't it? It's very simple for you, right? Save me. I beg you, please save me. Yingjing's words sounded a little ridiculous because at this moment, Yingjing was actually begging Gahan to cut off his head. Yingjing felt that in order to save Gu Xianwu, Gahan would definitely save him. Then he would have a chance of survival, and he would have the capital to turn the tables in the future. Master, Lu Shihua also looked at Gahan nervously. As long as Gahan gave the order, she would immediately take the risk to cut off Yingjing's head. Yingjing, Gahan finally spoke. He looked at Yingjing deeply, and then said, Actually, I quite admire you. You relied on your own strength to get to where you are now, step by step. You are different from me, who receive help from countless people. You fought alone for 3,000 years. From this point, you are the real hero. I'm not as good as you, and I'm not as good as you. Gahan, Yingjing never thought that Gahan would say such words at this time. And Gahan's sudden praise also made Yingjing temporarily forget the threat of death, and looked at Gahan blankly. I can save you, and I can also ignore what you have done to mankind. In fact, you have also contributed to mankind. I have been tied down by things for more than a month. If it weren't for you, I am afraid that Yuzhong City would have been destroyed. But in terms of this, your contribution is greater than a day, and it can completely cover up your selfishness. Yingjing was really touched. He really did not expect that Gahan would say such words. He felt a kind of joy from being understood and approved. But you have lived for so long. Don't you feel tired? Gahan let a long sigh and said, You'd better go in peace, and don't make any more trouble. Guhan, I will *CK you. It was obvious that Yingjing, who had been teased by a sudden turn, wanted to curse Guhan. But he no longer had the chance to do so, because all the heads that had fallen off earlier had already attached themselves to Yingjing's body. Then, these heads directly fused with Yingjing's body. At this moment, Yingjing was a monster with heads all over his body. And at the moment when these heads merged with Yingjing's body, Yingjing's eyes, which had been wide open all the time, suddenly disappeared without a trace. This time, Yingjing was really dead. Chapter 1451. Did Yingjing really die just like that? Lu Shihua couldn't help but lament as he watched the murderer, who had been his enemy for a long time and almost killed him, lose all signs of life just like that. Dead. He's dead. If the 12 Zuwu really wanted to resurrect, he would never let the 13 Zuwu go. Gahan's expression was a little complicated. Actually, I didn't kill him from the beginning to the end. It was his own greed that killed him. I have to say, this is really a little ridiculous. But Master, Yingjing is dead. Then, won't you never find Miss Black Tortoise's secret and the location of Mount Huagua Mountain? Lu Shihua said with some worry. Don't worry. Even if I don't find it in Mount Huagua Mountain, it will jump out by itself sooner or later, Gahan said faintly. Hearing Gahan's words, Lu Shihua also seemed to understand something. He asked curiously, Master, did you already know about this? I guess most of it. Gahan sighed, then decisively changed the topic. Let's not talk about this first. When the 12 Zuwu's brains completely absorb Yingjing, I'm afraid that the 12 Zuwu's will really resurrect. There are still too many humans who have not entered the Void Gate. This is the real problem we need to worry about. But Master, why don't we kill the 12 Zuwu's directly before they resurrect? Why do we have to wait until they resurrect? Lu Shihua asked puzzledly. Didn't Master tell you that the 12 Zuwu's also have something that Master wants? So, the 12 Zuwu's must be resurrected, and then Master will personally kill them. Only then can Master get what Master wants. Gahan said straightforwardly. Yes, Master, I understand. Disciple will listen to Master's words. Lu Shihua nodded vigorously. Very good. Master has an important thing for you to do now, Gohan said with a smile. Master, please give the order. I promise to complete the task. Lu Shihua replied immediately. I don't need you to complete the mission. I just want to see what you've achieved in the past 10 years. Gohan said with a smile. Your Majesty, long sure, this won't do. The crowd is too chaotic. Many people keep clamoring, saying that this is a trap set by Ying Zheng, who wants to trap them in a dark prison forever. Therefore, many people are unwilling to enter the Void Gate. People are being trampled to death every moment. Your Majesty, what do you think we should do? Longsure Jindy had a bitter look on his face as he listened to the reports of the other sword-bearers. Although the sword-bearers have been working very hard to send hundreds of millions of people into the Void Gate, however, the reality was that most people did not believe the words of these sword-bearers. They refused to enter the Void Gate no matter what. Damn it, this is all the doing of that bastard Ying Zheng, the retribution that he sowed. He has caused all the sword-bearers to lose more than half of their prestige. Another sword-bearer next to him gnashed his teeth and said, Ying Zheng's perverse behavior in the past 12 days had completely made all the ordinary people see the true face of Ying Zheng. But at the same time, those sword-bearers who followed Ying Zheng and did not dare to resist had also completely lost their former prestige. If it was in the past, as long as these sword-bearers said a word, most ordinary people would instinctively believe the words of the sword-bearers and would be willing to jump into a mountain of knives and a sea of fire. But now, these sword-bearers were trying their best to persuade them, but most ordinary people remained unmoved. They felt that these sword-bearers had become Ying Zheng's accomplices. Fine, this old man will personally persuade them. Longsure Jindy gritted his teeth and said after hearing the report of his subordinates. Then he took out a set of instruments from his dimensional pocket. After operating it for a while, under the projection of this instrument, a huge figure larger than Ying Zheng appeared in Yuzhong City. Of course, unlike Ying Zheng's real body, the figure of Longsure Jindy that appeared this time was just a very obvious virtual image. It was an image that was enlarged with the help of a three-dimensional projection equipment. Although this image looked a little fuzzy, it was enough for all the ordinary people to see clearly that the one who appeared at this time was none other than Longsure Jindy. At the same time, Longsure Jindy's voice also resounded throughout Yuzhong City. Dear compatriots, we did not deceive you. Ying Zheng did not really kill the 12 Zhu Wu, and now Ying Zheng has been devoured by the 12 Zhu Wu, and the 12 Zhu Wu is about to be reborn. But now that Yuzhong City has lost the protection of the super-dimensional wall system, everyone can only wait for death in Yuzhong City. We have now opened the super-large Void Gate. Please, for the sake of this Longsure Jindy's old face, please enter the Void Gate immediately. This is really for the sake of everyone. Longsure Jindy's persuasion was very earnest and well-intentioned, and coupled with his old face, it really had a certain effect. After listening to his words, many people hesitantly entered the Void Gate. But in fact, not many people were persuaded. More people still stood motionless outside the Void Gate, still refusing to enter the Void Gate. At the same time, such a dialogue was constantly circulating among the crowd. Hey, don't believe the words of the Dragon Lion Sword Emperor. Have you forgotten that he was the one who promised us that Ying Zheng would be a good leader? He was also the one who promised us that Ying Zheng would be able to save us. If it wasn't for him, how could we have allowed an unknown human to be our leader? That's right, this Longsure Jindy and Ying Zheng must be in cahoots. Otherwise, when Ying Zheng announced that he wanted to become the emperor, completely gave up the super-dimensional wall system, announced that he wanted to choose 3,000 women from our daughters and girlfriends, and even wanted to castrate some of our children and make them eunuchs, why didn't Longsure Jindy come out to stop him? I heard that the appearance of Sword Immortal Hong Jun, the resurrection of Shihua Jindy, and the death of Ying Zheng are all hoaxes. Do you see the Ying Zheng whose body is now covered with skulls? I heard that Ying Zheng is now practicing a peerless evil technique. Once he masters it, his strength will increase by 100 times, but at the cost of the lives of 400 million people. Therefore, Once we enter the void gate, we will become Ying Zheng's cultivation furnace and will die in vain. Everyone, please don't be fooled. As the saying goes, 3 people make a tiger. At that time, when several people were constantly telling such words in one's ear, even a rational person would not be able to help but believe these so-called truths. Therefore, they still stood trembling outside the void gate, and no matter what they did, they refused to enter the void gate. These fools! When Long Shi Jindy saw this scene, his whole body trembled with anger, and his old body seemed even more aged. Perhaps Long Shi Jindy would die of anger here. "Senior, let me do it." At this time, a gentle voice sounded in Long Shi Jindy's ear. "Everyone, listen up. Don't believe Long Shi Jindy's words. He is going to deceive us to die." Just as the crowd was constantly consolidating such thoughts, they suddenly found that next to the huge phantom of Long Shi Jindy, a new phantom suddenly appeared. It's Sword Immortal Shihua. Oh my god, it's really Sword Immortal Shihua. When this figure appeared, everyone was shocked. They looked at the sky incredulously, rubbing their eyes as if they had seen a ghost. "Hello, everyone. I haven't seen you for 4 years. I don't know if you still remember me," Lu Shihua said with a smile on his face, and this smile was really familiar to everyone. In the 16 years from 4 to 20 years ago, almost everyone had grown up looking at this smiling face. As a chairman of the Sword Committee for 16 years, Lu Shihua had long been deeply immersed in everyone's consciousness. Even when Ying Zheng's authority was at its peak, when someone mentioned the chairman of the Sword Committee, most people would instinctively think of Lu Shihua's face. "Chairman Shihua, great. You're really not dead. That's really great. That's really great," someone said, then directly knelt down and began to cry. And this cry quickly infected many people around. Almost a quarter of the human beings, after seeing Lu Shihua appear, could not help but burst into tears. Because in the 16 years when Lu Shihua was in power, it was almost the best 16 years that human beings had lived. Probably because he had suffered a lot when he was an ordinary person, Lu Shihua had announced a lot of policies that were full of kindness to ordinary people in the past 16 years, so that the status of ordinary people in the city had been greatly improved. The allocation of resources had also been more, and their lives have been better. Therefore, almost all ordinary people were grateful to Lu Shihua. It was precisely because of this that when Lu Shihua appeared, a quarter of the human beings burst into tears, because they really missed the good life in Lu Shihua's era. Dear compatriots, I can assure you that Long Shi Jindy did not deceive you. If possible, I will certainly explain everything in detail to you. But now we don't have time. The 12 Zhu may resurrect at any time. If you're still in Yuzhong City, you can only wait for death. Please rest assured, these void doors were opened by my master. They are directly connected to the void and are one of the safest places in the world. Everyone, please, for the sake of my name, Lu Shihua, please enter the gate of the void. I beg of everyone. After Lu Shihua finished speaking, the huge figure directly bowed deeply to everyone. Because this figure was directly enlarged and projected on the human body, at this time Lu Shihua must have also deeply bowed to everyone. Damn, Ying Zheng is not worthy of trust, but is Chairman Shihua also not worthy of trust? I believe that Chairman Shihua will never harm me. No, even if I am killed by Chairman Shihua, I will still be happy. I will go in now. Immediately, someone shouted, and then directly stepped into the void door. And this person's action was only a signal. With Lu Shihua's bow, the crowd that had been in a stalemate finally began to surge like a tide, and a large number of people directly marched into the void door. And under the pressure of so many people, even those who were still full of doubts at this time had no choice but to follow the crowd into the void door. Good. It seems that my disciple has really done a good job in the past 20 years. My decision that year was not wrong. Seeing such a turbulent crowd, Gohan could not help but praise. Even Gohan should not underestimate Lu Shihua's influence among humans. Not to mention others, in this point, even Gohan and Lu Shihua were too far apart. Chapter 1452. Sister, I was wrong. Please forgive me. At this time, there was a person who seemed to have been completely forgotten by everyone. This person was Lu Shihua's good brother, Lu Yin. At this time, Lu Yin was still kneeling in his previous position, not moving at all. Get up. A familiar voice sounded in Lu Yin's ear. Why are you kneeling here? Get up. Master. Lu Yin raised his head in surprise and looked at Guhan, who was standing in front of him. Then, he began to crazily kowtow. His head banged on the ground, and it sounded like he was smashing nails. As he kowtowed, he begged, Master, I know I was wrong. I really know I was wrong. Please, please, I beg you to tell sister. Ask her to forgive me. This shouldn't be said by me, nor should it be up to me to decide. Gohan placed his hand on Lu Yin's head and gently stroked Lu Yin's hair. This was a relatively intimate action, and, at the same time, it was also a way to make people feel comfortable and comfortable. However, when Gohan's hand stroked Lu Yin's hair, Lu Yin felt a sharp, ice-cold aura constantly rushing from his scalp to his body. It felt like Gohan's hand was going to crush his head at any time. No, Master won't kill me. Lu Yin tried hard to restrain his desire to escape, and at the same time, he persuaded himself. Oh, by the way, don't call me Master, Gohan said immediately. Master. When Lu Yin heard Gohan say this, he immediately became anxious and wanted to explain, but Gohan didn't give him a chance to continue and said indifferently, It's not because of what you did that I don't want you as my disciple. It's because you were never my disciple from the beginning to the end. Because I didn't teach you anything from beginning to end, and I didn't teach you all your skills. My only disciple was your sister. I hope you can understand this. But Master, of course, if it wasn't for that bottle of sovereign blood, how could I have my current strength? It was you who opened up my future in my life. Master, you are my master. Lu Yin desperately kowtowed as he replied. Are you trying to tell me that the reason you became like this because of your pursuit of power is because of me? That I shouldn't have opened the door to your pursuit of power? Gohan said coldly. Disciple doesn't dare. Disciple doesn't mean that. Lu Yin immediately panicked when he heard this and hurriedly said, Sai, do you still remember the first time we met? That time was so nostalgic. Gohan sighed and said faintly, Back then, I was seriously injured and couldn't even move my body. It was you who dug me out from the ruins and let me live in your shabby home. Who asked you to be so stingy with food? After you took care of me for a month, I was finally able to recover. Be it you or your sister, you're actually my benefactors. If it wasn't for you two, I'm afraid I would have died. Actually, now that I think about it, perhaps the time I spent lying in your home was the most peaceful and happy period of my life. At that time, I didn't have to think too much, and I didn't have to watch the backs of you and your sister busy themselves in front of me. I could spend a day leisurely. Now that I think about it, I don't think I've ever had such a beautiful and leisurely time again. Master, you're exaggerating. This is what we should do. Lu Yin was also affected by Gohan's words. He forgot about the bone-chilling cold on his head and said with tears flowing down his face. Of course, Lu Yin also vaguely felt that something was wrong, but in this panic he couldn't figure out what was wrong. Master, Disciple didn't think that things would actually turn out like this. If it was possible, Disciple really hoped that you were just an ordinary person at that time. Me, my sister, and you could live in that small slum for the rest of our lives. Perhaps in that case, Disciple wouldn't have taken such a wrong step. Lu Yin said chokingly. It's too late. It's all too late. Gohan sighed. His hands that were originally constantly stroking Lu Yin's head suddenly turned into a pair of sharp claws, firmly grasping Lu Yin's head. It's too late. You can't go back. You're no longer that innocent and cute child. Since you can make the decision to harm your sister, you should be able to think of today's ending. This matter shouldn't have been decided by me, nor should it have been done by me. This should have been your sister's responsibility. But I know your sister too well. Your sister still loves you from the bottom of her heart. You're still her closest brother, so there's no way she would kill you. But in the cycle of reincarnation, good and evil will be rewarded. Your actions have determined that you must receive the punishment you deserve. Since your sister can't bear to kill you, and since you keep saying that I'm your master, Then let me, your master, clean up the house and get rid of you. Luin, are you ready? Yes. Disciple understands. Disciple deserves to die. Disciple, accept your death. Luin closed his eyes and completely gave up on resisting. He also gave up on arguing and calmly prepared to accept death. No, Master, don't. Master, don't. At this moment, Lu Shihua, who had finished persuading Luin, thought of his brother and his master. Lu Shihua, who had already understood something, immediately flew through the void gate and returned to Gahan's side. Lu Shihua instinctively wanted to push her master away and save her brother. But just as her hands were about to touch Gahan, she retracted them and knelt in front of Gahan with a plop. Tears streamed down her face as she cried, Master, I'm begging you. This disciple only has one family left. Please spare Lu Yin's life. I believe that Lu Yin will definitely turn over a new leaf. Seeing his disciple, who had sacrificed so much for him, kneeling in front of him and begging him not to kill her only brother, even Gahan couldn't help but feel a little soft-hearted. If it was a normal male lead, he might have let out a long sigh and let this fellow live under his disciple's pleas. At most, he would cripple Lu Yin's entire life and make him a normal person. But Gahan wasn't a normal male lead. The word decisive had never disappeared from Gahan's name. Disciple, do you know what Master regrets the most? Gahan looked at Lu Shihua and asked. I don't know. Lu Shihua shook her head. Right now, her mind was in a mess. How could she know what she regretted the most in her life? What Master regrets the most is that I didn't kill Ingzheng in Shanghai Pass. Instead, I made some bullsh** T deal with him, which caused 200 million people to die in this catastrophe. Disciple, each of these 200 million people has their parents, their wives, and their children. They could have been leisurely lying in their bedroom, watching TV, accompanying their lovely children and kind parents, living a life that may not have been happy, but it was a natural thing to do. But because of Master's mistake, these 200 million people died. There are also tens of thousands of sword bearers, as well as those famous sword bearers who have made great contributions to humanity in Shanghai Pass. They're all dead. So, disciple, Master won't make such a mistake again. Since you've made a mistake, you have to accept the punishment you deserve. Otherwise, how can those who didn't make a mistake but suffered pain and torture be innocent? As soon as Gahan finished speaking, the thousands of sword qis in his hand pierced into Lu Yin's body. Lu Yin let out a cold snort. On the surface, there seemed to be no change, but just like Ingzheng, he instantly lost all signs of life. As Gahan loosened his grip, Lu Yin collapsed to the ground powerlessly, turning into a stiff corpse. At this moment, Lu Yin's bones were still intact, but all of his internal organs had already been ground into a pile of meat paste by the cold sword qi. Moreover, Lu Yin's head had been completely minced by Gahan. At the same time, because of his understanding of consciousness fragments, Lu Yin had no way of surviving through soul fragments. It could be said that Lu Yin was completely dead. Brother, my brother, Lu Shihua wailed, his voice rising from the ground to the clouds. It was as if the whole world was ringing with Lu Shihua's cries. And at this moment, the crowd that was rushing into the void gate froze at the same time. Every one of them heard Lu Shihua's cries. His cries sounded like they came from the abyss, and it stirred their souls. At this moment, all humans were grieving for Lu Shihua's sorrow. What you're doing is really too cruel. Don't you think about Shihua's feelings at all? At the same time, another weak voice pierced through the void and rang in Gahan's ear. Since my disciple can't make the right decision, I, as his master, can only do it on his behalf. I will never make the same mistake I made with Ingzheng. Gahan's hand instantly reached into the void, and then, with a forceful pull, a pale body was pulled into his embrace. No! The old voice cried out, but how could she stop the young and strong Gahan? So she was still pulled into Gahan's arms. You've finally appeared. I thought you wouldn't appear. Gahan said softly as he stroked the familiar but old face in front of him. No, don't look at me. Please don't look at me. Liu Yanling's voice was on the verge of crying. She really did not want Gahan to see her like this. Lu Shihua was now clearly an old woman. Her skin was old, shriveled, and there was not a single trace of blood on her body. Her face was full of wrinkles, and all her hair was silver white. She was so thin that only her skin wrapped around her bones. At the same time, her body exuded the unique smell of death of an old person. Now, that Liu Yanling was in Gahan's arms. She looked like an 80-year-old woman being hugged by a 20-year-old boy. It was an extremely disharmonious and mismatched scene. Liu Yanling was afraid of such a scene. This was also the reason why she had not dared to show her face in front of Gahan, even though she had already known about Gahan's return. She had been hiding in the void, watching everything silently. It was only when Gahan had killed Lu Yin that Liu Yanling could not help but say that out of sorrow in her heart. Only then did Gahan grab her into his arms. I don't want to say anything. Even if you become this old, I'll still like your nonsense. Gahan caressed and felt Liu Yanling's moist and loyal skin as he said, just you watch. After we kill the 12 Zuwu, I'll return your youth to you. In a small plot of land, one person was hugging a corpse and wailing bitterly, while the other was hugging an old woman and making promises that sounded like a fantasy. Chapter 1453. Don't brag about me now. Fleeting Time pushed Gahan away and looked worriedly at Lu Sihua, who was still bawling his eyes out. I really don't know where you got your heart from. How could you kill the brother of your disciple, who loved you so much? Aren't you afraid that your disciple's entire generation will hate you for it? Yes, I'm more afraid than anyone else. Gahan nodded. Looking at Lu Shihua's back, he suddenly seemed to have aged a little. But I have to do it. I really can't make the same mistake again. Then you'd better talk to your disciple. Otherwise, the more time passes, the deeper the knot in her heart will become. I'm really afraid that the two of you will become enemies because of this. Liu Yanling said. Yes, it's time to talk to Shihua. Gahan nodded and walked behind Lu Shihua. After hesitating for a long time, he said faintly, Shihua, will you hate Master? Master, you don't have to say anything else. Shihua understands your reasoning. Lu Yin deserves to die, and your disciple will never hate you, Master. But Master, can you let your disciple cry in peace for a while, then hug Lu Yin? Although Shihua's voice was calm, it contained a heart-wrenching pain. Master understands. Gahan nodded. He looked around Yuzhong City and found that the crowd had almost dispersed. There were still some people who did not believe in Ing Zheng's evil plan, or who still thought that it was a conspiracy, and were hiding in some corners of the city, unwilling to enter the Void Gate. There were quite a number of such people, about 1 million in total. Then, Gahan looked at Ing Zheng's corpse, which was completely surrounded by 12 heads. At this moment, Ing Zheng's corpse no longer looked like a human anymore. It had completely turned into a huge lump of meat, and around this lump of meat were 12 different heads. On top of that, a powerful aura began to surround the entire corpse. Feeling this aura, Gahan understood that there was not much time left for humans. The 12 Zuwu was about to be resurrected. Gahan, there's still some time. Why don't I clear the area again and force these people into the Void Gate? Liu Yanling walked over. As the only descendant of the Lu Nian family, she could also feel the aura of the 12 Zuwu's resurrection. She also discovered that there were still many humans hiding in the city, so she took the initiative to speak up. Forget it. These people chose their own path. Since they chose the path of death, then it's their fate. Let's not waste any more time on them. Gahan said calmly. At the same time, he decided the fate of these poor, self-righteous humans. Understood. Liu Yanling nodded. If it was Liu Yanling who had just made her debut, she might have pleaded for these doomed humans. However, Liu Yanling had seen hundreds of millions of people die. The number of millions was just a string of numbers in Liu Yanling's heart. They had already done their duty. As for these people who were courting death, they could only leave them be. Ling, the most important thing now is to send those sword-bearers who are still scattered everywhere into the Void Gate. There must be some sword-bearers who are as stupid as these humans and are hiding somewhere in the city. In that case, I'll have to trouble you and the other immortal sword wielders to chase them into the void gate one by one, Guhan said. Got it. Liu Ling nodded again. At this time, the difference between ordinary people and sword-bearers was once again reflected. If ordinary people were stupid, they could only die. However, if the sword-bearers were stupid, there were people who were willing to save their lives. That's right. You must ensure your own safety. If you really can't save the sword-bearers, don't bother about them. If you're in danger, just enter the void gate directly. There must be no hesitation. I can already feel that when the 12 Grand Wizards are resurrected, they will be even more powerful than before. You might be able to keep your life, but the rest of the immortal sword-level sword-bearers won't be able to last more than a few seconds. I know all this. Liu Ling seemed to be a little impatient. She stared deeply at Gahan and said, What about you? Are you going to stay here alone and face the 12 Zhu Wu who are even more terrifying? Of course, as I said, I have something I must obtain from the 12 Zhu Wu, so I must kill them with my own hands. This is my destiny, and it is something I must do, Gohan said with a smile. Then what about your safety? Liu Ling was still full of worry. Don't you understand me? I am actually the most afraid of death in this world. If all of you die, I will definitely still be alive. Gohan laughed. Liu Ling also knew that she could not convince Gahan no matter what. She brought the sword bearers who were in hiding and began to send the sword bearers into the void one by one. Shihua, you go into the void too, Gohan said to the still crying Lu Shihua after sending Liu Ling away. Master, Shihua doesn't want to go in. Lu Shihua shook his head, still full of sorrow. Shihua's heart is full of hatred now. Shihua doesn't want to vent it on Master, so Shihua can only vent it on the 12 Zhu Wu. Master, if you don't let Shihua vent it out, Shihua will go crazy. That's good. With the 12-winged angel sword, your safety is even higher than Master's. If you don't want to go into the void, then don't. Guhan sighed, then waved his hand, and Lu Yin's body disappeared. Master! Seeing Lu Yin's body disappear, Lu Shihua immediately panicked, looking at Gahan with fear in his eyes. Was it not enough for his master to kill his brother, so he had to destroy his brother's body? Don't get the wrong idea. I am not that cruel. Gohan sighed, then patted Lu Shihua's head. Don't worry, Master is only keeping Lu Yin's body in his dimensional pocket. Believe Master, Master is doing this for your own good. If this body is kept by your side, sooner or later you will be driven crazy by this body, and then one day you might want to kill Master. So it's better to keep this body from Master. If you want to see it, Master will let you see it at any time. This is the best outcome for you. Master, you bastard, Lu Shihua cried, crying even more sadly. At the same time, he also cursed at Gahan, but he did not ask Gahan for Lu Yin's body. Lu Shihua knew in his heart that this was indeed the best outcome and choice for him. Soon, under Gahan's arrangements, the originally bustling and lively Yuzhong city instantly became extremely quiet. Only the horrifying mass of meat was still constantly changing, and two figures were floating directly above it, watching the changes with expressionless faces. Finally, when a lump of flesh expanded to its maximum size, the 12 ancestral sorcerers' heads opened their eyes in an instant. Then, they began to protrude outwards at the same time. As the 12 heads grew, necks, shoulders, chests, abdomens, buttocks, legs, 12 complete human bodies gradually grew out of the lump of flesh. The lump of flesh itself became smaller and smaller, and as the 12 bodies grew, the lump of flesh disappeared. At the same time, this also meant that the last trace of Ying Zheng's existence in this world was gone. Is this the 12 Zhu Wu? Gohan looked at the 12 newly born bodies and said with some admiration and curiosity. In fact, this was the first time Gahan really saw the 12 Zhu Wu's appearance. After all, when the 12 Zhu Wus were wreaking havoc in the human world, Gahan was still in the seamless corridor. I've been resurrected. Ancestral Magus Emperor Jiang, who had been resurrected, suddenly spoke. Lu Shihua, who was standing aside, frowned. How is it? Gohan looked at Lu Shihua and asked, "This doesn't seem to be Dijiang's voice." Lu Shihua said doubtfully, "Dijiang's voice sounds like the voice of a huge, strange bird. Even though it's human language, it's filled with a kind of sharp bird song. But now Dijiang's voice has completely become human, and there's no sense of sharpness. There's nothing strange about that. After all, they've been reborn." Gohan said indifferently, "I've been resurrected too. I've been resurrected too." The 12 ancestors of sorcerers said the same thing with their eyes closed one after another. Everyone found it strange. Was it necessary to repeat the same thing to each of them? It felt like a repeater. "It seems that our plan has worked," Dijiang said again. "With the help of the 13th Zhu Wu's body, we've finally completed the assimilation and rebirth. That's right. I've already felt the original power of this world. We're no longer rejected by this world, and we become the real Zhu Wu." Zhu Wu Huta said, "So the reason why you guys want to be reborn with Ing Zheng's body is to assimilate with this world." Gohan said after hearing the conversation between the Zhu Wus. "Master? What do you mean?" Lu Shihua asked in confusion. "It's very simple. The 12 Zhu Wus are Yuankos after all. They can use their own power, but they're rejected by our world. As the embodiment of Pan Gu's body, if the 12 Zhu Wus are rejected by the world, they're destined not to be able to exert their real power. So if they want to regain their original power, they have to become the people of this world, or in other words, the native Zhu Wus of this world." Gohan said, "So they used Ing Zheng's body, because Ing Zheng is an ancestral wizard born and bred in this world." Lu Shihua finally understood what Ing Zheng was trying to tell him. If this was the truth, the seemingly reckless 12 Zhu Wus with a head full of muscles and no intelligence had ruthlessly schemed against the cunning Ing Zheng. With today's good show, Ing Zheng took the initiative to eat the Zhu Wu's blood beads, which have been reborn, and then the 12 Zhu Wus could be reborn with Ing Zheng's body. "My disciple, get ready for battle. It's going to be a very difficult battle." Gohan smiled and drew out the heavenly sword from his waist. Chapter 1454. That's weird. Why is Master using the heavenly sword? Why isn't Master using his Emperor's sword? Lu Shihua thought to himself in confusion when he saw that Gohan was holding the heavenly sword in his hand. However, since Gohan was doing this, he must have had his reasons. Therefore, Lu Shihua didn't say anything. Instead, he gripped the seraph sword in his hand tightly. "Human, are you going to fight us?" As if sensing the murderous intent in Gohan's hand, a Zhu Wu's sharp eyes instantly looked at Gohan in the sky. At the same time, Gohan recognized that this Zhu Wu was Zhu Wu Gomon. "That's funny. You make it sound like you're not going to fight me." Lu Shihua wiped the tears from the corners of his eyes and said, "Let's fight to the death today. Why should I fight?" Ancestral wizard Emperor Zhang's words stunned Lu Shihua. Wasn't the battle between him and the 12 ancestral wizards a matter of course? "You're Yuan Ko, and we're humans. Of course we have to fight. Do you need to ask for a reason?" Lu Shihua said through gritted teeth. "That reason doesn't hold water." Dijiang's huge head stared at Lu Shihua and said something that made Lu Shihua even more confused. "We're no longer Yuan Ko. We're free from the shackles of filth. We're the original Zhu Wu of this world. I don't want to kill you humans. Why should we fight?" Lu Shihua was stunned for a while before saying, "Then don't you want to kill us humans?" "No." Dijiang shook his head. "There's reincarnation in the heavenly Tao. We're no longer the main characters of this world. The main characters of this world are you humans. We, the Wu people, don't have to go against the main characters of this world." Lu Shihua was stunned again. "Then don't you want to destroy our city? Is the city you're talking about the thing under our feet?" Dijiang looked around, then shook his head. "If you don't want us to destroy this place, we could just fly out of this city. I promise we won't hurt your city." Lu Shihua was even more confused. She didn't ask anything else, but Dijiang continued, "We have no interest in fighting for living space with you humans. This world belongs to you humans. We, the Wu people, only hope to obtain the piece of land within the Shanhai Pass that you mentioned, so that we, the Wu people can flourish. From now on, the human race and the Wu people will never be allowed to enter each other's territory. Everyone will live in peace on their own land. This is the attitude of the Wu people. Master. Lu Shihua tugged at Gahan's sleeve subconsciously. Clearly, Lu Shihua didn't know what to say anymore. According to the 12 Zhu Wu, they who had taken the initiative to get rid of the filthy control now wanted to live a quiet and peaceful life without aggression with humans. Therefore, they really didn't invade each other, and humans didn't need to be wary of the Wu people anymore. This was fundamentally different from what Lu Shihua had imagined. Lu Shihua had always thought that they would have an earth-shattering battle with the 12 Zhu Wu, so she had never thought that this would happen. If this was the case, then wouldn't it be a stupid waste of time for over 400 million people to hide in the void? Those who hid in Yuzhong City and didn't want to enter the void were the real smart ones? If this was the case, it was too funny. Lu Shihua didn't think this was a normal plot development from the bottom of her heart. But on second thought, this seemed to be the real, normal plot development. Since the Wu people had been freed from the filthy control, they had lost the reason to fight with humans. If this was the case, why would the Wu people fight to the death with humans? The Wu people could completely become transcendent existences like the free cities. They just needed to live their own lives. This was the real, normal plot development. Master, why don't we send the 12 Zhu Wu off? Lu Shihua looked at Guhan and said with some hesitation, if they could truly maintain peace, that would be the best thing. Of course, Lu Shihua hoped to see an ending where there was no need to fight anymore. Of course, not having to fight is of course a good thing. There's no reason to refuse, is there? Guhan smiled and seemed to have agreed to the peace invitation of the 12 Zhu Wu. What? The Wu people actually want to live in peace with us. They have been freed from the filthy control. This is great. That's great. The conversation between Lu Shihua and the 12 Grand Wizards was not only heard by the people present. In fact, the Dragon Lion Sword Emperor was using his ability to broadcast the scene outside the void into the void in real time. It felt as if he was watching the scene outside the window through a glass window. This scene and conversation were not only heard by the sword bearers, but also by all the humans who were shivering in the void, who were hiding in the void. But the sword bearers and ordinary humans had two completely different attitudes. The sword bearers began to cheer loudly. When they saw the 12 Zhu Wu completely resurrected through the void, their hearts were filled with fear. If the death of the 12 Zhu Wu was really just the 12 Zhu Wu throwing away their lives, didn't that mean that they had never really defeated the 12 Zhu Wu from beginning to end? But now that the 12 Zhu Wu had been resurrected, their strength must have increased. Otherwise, there would be no need for them to resurrect like this. At this time, the 12 Zhu Wu was probably no longer in existence that humans could defeat. Even if all the human sword-bearers rushed forward at this time and fought, in the end, there would only be a dead end. Such fear had been deeply engraved in the bones of the sword-bearers. Therefore, when they heard that the 12 ancestral sorcerer had taken the initiative to ask for peace, the sword-bearers started cheering. Of course, they did not want to fight, as fighting would mean death. It was a wonderful thing to give the 12 ancestral sorcerers territory in exchange for peace between humans and the ancestral sorcerer. So almost all the sword-bearers nodded in agreement. Even Longshi Jiandi was no exception. They really didn't want to fight anymore. On the other hand, the ordinary people fell silent. It wasn't that they didn't want peace, but they were reminded of their loved ones who had died in the hands of the ancestor of witchcraft. If humans were to live in peace with their tribe, wouldn't it mean that their loved ones and their cities had died in vain? But these people couldn't say anything. They didn't even dare to say a word of objection, because they were all ordinary people. Even if they wanted to take revenge, they didn't have the strength to do so. Doing so would only lead to more human deaths. So even if their hatred for the 12 Zhu Wu was burning to the extreme, they didn't dare to really express their thoughts. In this way, silence became the best way. Therefore, at this time, humans almost reached a consensus at the same time, and that was peace. No matter if it was peace they hoped for or not, and no matter if this peace was stained with human blood, peace was always a good thing, wasn't it? So at this time, everyone looked at Lu Shihua and Gahan expectantly, hoping that they would immediately agree to the 12 Zuwu's request and that the humans and the Zuwus would maintain peace forever. It seemed that Gohan and Lu Shihua were ready to agree to the 12 Zuwu's request. But the next second, Gohan's voice became bone-chilling. But have you asked the other 200 million humans for their opinion? What do you mean, humans? Dijiang asked in confusion. Actually, I don't know the specific number, but the number of 200 million shouldn't be too little. Not too much. Gohan sighed. A total of 200 million people have died in your attacks over the past 4 years. What I mean is that my agreement isn't important. What's important is to get the agreement of these 200 million people. If they are willing to keep peace with you, then I have no objection. They're already dead. How can we ask for their opinion? Xian Ming continued. Plus, it's only 200 million people. Compared to your human race's reproduction rate of locusts, these 200 million people can be completely replenished in 70 to 80 years. You can reproduce slowly. Why do you have to pester us endlessly here? So the lives of 200 million people are just pestering in your eyes. Gahan smiled indifferently. So, it seems that you don't intend to take responsibility for the 7 cities we humans lost. Why you have so much nonsense? If you want to start a war, Zhurong, will accompany you anytime. Zhurong, with his fiery red skin, said energetically. Good, then let's fight. Use your lives to atone for our 200 million dead souls. Gohan said straightforwardly. The situation that could have been heading towards peace seemed to have been completely destroyed at this moment. What is Hong Junjini doing? Could it be that he still wants to continue fighting? Hearing Gahan's words, some sword bearers in the void didn't understand. They were even a little angry. Peace had come. Did Gahan want to keep fighting? Hong Junjini isn't qualified to represent us. We must have peace. Let Hong Junjini come back. Let Shihua Jindy negotiate with the Wu people. Another sword-bearer said loudly. Many people agreed with him. But Hong Junjindi is right. Are our 200 million people going to die in vain? Of course, there were still some dissenting voices amidst the crowds growing agitated. However, his voice was too soft and weak, and it was quickly drowned out. Your Majesty Long Shi Jindy, we have to go out. We have to make Hong Junjini take back what he said. He isn't qualified to represent us. Some sword-bearers said loudly. Then, a few immortal-level sword-bearers prepared to open the void and leave. However, after waiting for 3 or 4 minutes, there was still no change in the void and no exit was opened. What's wrong? Hurry up and open the exit. Do you want Hong Junjindi to destroy our peace? Some sword-bearers urged anxiously. It's not that I don't want to open it, but the void can't be opened. What's going on? Why can't the void be opened? This is impossible. I open the void every day. These immortal-level sword-bearers were also very anxious. However, no matter how hard they tried, the door of the void could no longer be opened. Give up. Without Gohan's consent, I'm afraid the door of the void can't be opened. Liu Yanling, who had been silent all this while, suddenly said calmly. When he was still a spiritual sword level, he had already mastered the rules of the void. Now that he has become an Emperor sword-bearer, the void is like a toy in his hands. Without his consent, no one can leave, not even me. Chapter 1455. Since this human doesn't know what's good for him and wants to fight us, then why are we still talking nonsense? Kill him, then kill all the other humans. This world will belong to us, the Sorcerer Tribe. Damn the main character of the world. Aren't we, the Sorcerer Tribe, back now? Zhu Rong became extremely impatient after hearing the conversation between Gohan and Dijiang. The moment the negotiation broke down, endless flames swept towards Gohan. This was Zhu Rong's true Samadhi fire. Back then, a small true Samadhi fire that was only the size of a lotus flower had already burned the powerful son Wukong to the point that he had to flee to the heavenly court for help. This time, Zhu Rong directly spat out the true samadhi fire that was as huge as a building, which immediately engulfed Sun Wukong's body. It's over. The war still started. Seeing that the war had finally started, a swordsman collapsed in the void powerlessly. His face was as pale as a funeral procession. Hong Jun Jiandi is a lunatic. Does he want to destroy us humans completely? Another sword-bearer wailed. Many other sword-bearers followed suit and wailed as well. You bastards! Liu Ling couldn't stand it anymore. She slapped the face of the crying swordsman. Did Gahan ask you to fight? Aren't you hiding safely in the void now? It's fine if you don't avenge the 200 million people who died. How dare you curse Gahan here? Who dares to cry again? Believe it or not, I'll kill you directly. Liu Ling's tough speech made the entire void quiet. Although Liu Ling looked very old, she still had her strength. Thinking of the scene when Liu Ling killed several Zhu Wu in a second, all the swordsmen couldn't help but shiver. Then, they shut their mouths obediently and didn't dare to make any sound. Liu Ling was right. The one fighting now was Gahan, and it had nothing to do with them. Moreover, the 12 Zhu Wu didn't have the ability to enter the void, so they were indeed in an absolutely safe place. Why would they cry? After scolding all the sword-bearers, Liu Ling disappeared into the crowd of 400 million people. At this moment, Liu Ling suddenly remembered that she had not paid attention to Maiden and Long Xiaoya for a long time. It was only now that Liu Ling suddenly recalled the existence of these two women. Her heart immediately became anxious. Liu Ling didn't know whether these two women entered the void with the crowd. If they didn't, things would be troublesome. After all, Long Xiaoya was pregnant with Gohan's flesh and blood. Liu Ling was already unable to give birth, so she suddenly had more hopes for the child in Long Xiaoya's belly. Liu Ling had to find Maiden and Long Xiaoya. However, the problem now was that quantum signals couldn't be transmitted in the void, so Liu Ling couldn't find Maiden and Long Xiaoya through her personal terminal. All Liu Ling could do was to look at the faces of the 400 million people until she saw Maiden and Long Xiaoya. On the other side, the battle had completely entered a heated state. Along with the disappearance of Zhu Rong's Samadhi True Fire, the area that had been burned by the Samadhi True Fire earlier had already been burnt into ashes. A part of the luxurious palace had also disappeared, and Guhan and Lu Shihua had also disappeared. He was burned to ashes just like that? What a useless thing, said Zhu Rong scornfully. However, Gong Gong, who was standing beside him, instantly changed his facial expression. He hurriedly pulled Zhu Rong behind him, and the moment Zhu Rong stepped back, a sharp long sword abruptly darted out of the void. If Gong Gong hadn't moved fast enough, Zhu Rong would have lost an arm under this sword at least. Thank you. Zhu Rong thanked Gong Gong in panic, while Gong Gong expressionlessly pushed Zhu Rong away. It seemed that the conflict between Zhu Rong and Gong Gong was mostly a rumor. Otherwise, Gong Gong wouldn't have saved Zhu Rong's life at this critical moment. Damn it, how dare you trick me? I'm going to kill you. Zhu Rong, who had just barely survived, instantly became angry. He clenched his fingers in the air, and countless fireballs emerged from around his body. All of these fireballs were made from the Samadhi True Fire. At the same time, these fireballs looked like living animals, madly searching for traces of Gahan in the air and launching attacks towards Gahan. Gahan snorted coldly. The heavenly sword held in his hand instantly drew a mysterious arc in the air, and all of those fireballs made from the Samadhi True Fire were instantly blown up. A part of the Samadhi True Fire even landed on the bodies of the other Zhu Wus, burning those Zhu Wus' bodies and leaving a burning smell on them. Zhu Rong, you little turkey, what are you doing? The rest of the ancestral sorcerers immediately cursed. Zhu Rong's face also turned a little red. He began to control more true Samadhi Fire fireballs to attack Guhan. However, the number of fireballs didn't mean anything. No matter how many fireballs Zhu Rong released, Gahan would always blow them up. The moment the fireballs exploded, Guhan dashed to Zhu Rong's side and pierced his heavenly sword into Zhu Rong's body. Although the heavenly sword was small, It contained a terrifying Genie-level power. Zhu Rong's body was pierced by the heavenly sword, and instantly, a splendid flower blossomed on his body. Precious Zhu Wu's blood continuously dripped down from his body. This human is so strong. I can't beat him. After fighting for less than a minute, Zhu Rong, who had been incomparably arrogant a moment ago, had already started asking his brothers for help. Zhu Rong shockingly found out that if he couldn't get help from the other Zhu Wu's warriors, he might not even last 10 minutes under Gahan's sword. Not good. Zhu Rong can't beat this human. Only at this moment, the other Zhu Wu's warriors, who had been watching this fight as if it was a joke, realized that they were terribly wrong. This human being in front of them was terrifyingly powerful. He had actually made Zhu Rong, who had been so proud and arrogant, take the initiative to ask for help. This was something that had never happened back then, not even during the Great War between human and magi. Zhu Rong, let me help you. Ho Tu, one of the Zhu Wu's warriors, launched the attack first. Streams of yellow-colored light, which represented the power of Earth, struck towards Gahan's body. Once these yellow-colored Earth powers touched Gahan's body, the gravity that Gahan's body had to bear would instantly increase by tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of times. In this way, Gahan wouldn't be able to keep moving at a high speed. For Zhu Wu's warriors, an opponent who couldn't move at a high speed was no different from a live target. Huta's idea was good, and this kind of tactic had made countless masters of the demon clan suffer grievances on the spot. What made Hutu terrified was that at the moment when his khaki power of the earth swept towards Guhan, three-sword cheese came out of nowhere from behind Guhan and directly smashed Huta's power of the earth. My earth power, earth rule power, has been shattered just like that. Huda was overwhelmed with fear when he saw this. As far as Huda knew, apart from the East Emperor Tai and Emperor Jun of the Demon Tribe, only the 6 sages hiding in the dark could break his power of rule. This human is really powerful. I'm afraid he's already on the verge of becoming a sage, but I'd like to see how powerful he is. At the same time, Emperor Jiang, the eldest of the 12 Zhu Wus, said to himself. Then, under his command, 4 more Zhu Wus joined the battlefield. 6 Zhu Wus began to besiege Gahan. My God, 6 Zhu Wus are attacking together. Hongjun Jindi is doomed. In the void, the sword wielders who were watching the battle wailed again when they saw 4 more ancestral sorcerers joining the battle. In the minds of these swordsmen, it was already amazing that Gahan could deal with 2 Zhu Wus at the same time. However, when 6 Zhu Wus attacked him at the same time, it was not a power that a human could resist. Gahan was definitely doomed. The only difference was how long it would take. According to the estimation of some pessimistic swordsmen, Gahan might not even last 3 minutes. He would either have to escape through the void or die in the hands of Zhu Wus. Time ticked by. When the battle between the 6 Zhu Wus and Gahan reached the 30th minute, everyone was completely shocked. That was because Hongjun Jindi, who had disappeared for 20 years, was now constantly shuttling between the void and reality. He was engaged in a fierce battle with the 6 Zhu Wus. The power of 7 rules collided throughout Yuzhong City. The buildings within a radius of 100 kilometers around the core area had been completely razed to the ground. Meanwhile, the battle between Gahan and the 6 Zhu Wus was still going on. At this moment, Zhu Wus and Emperor Zhongs were as shocked as anyone else. Even during the Great Shaman Demon War, East Emperor Tai and Emperor Jun of the Demon Clan did not have the ability to fight 6 Zhu Wus at the same time without using their primordial treasures. However, the human in front of them had done it. The battle between Gahan and the 6 Zhu Wus was still in a stalemate. From the looks of it, both sides were still evenly matched. It was naturally impossible for Gahan to kill one of the Zhu Wus alone, but it seemed that 6 Zhu Wus would take forever to kill Gahan. Gahan was able to block the 6 Zhu Wus with only the heaven-relieving sword in his hand. How terrifying his strength was. Such a powerful human. I've never heard of such a powerful being in the human clan since the Great Shaman Demon War, Emperor Jiang exclaimed. However, a cold smile soon appeared on his face. Unfortunately, you're alone, but there are 6 of us. Chapter 1456. They've made their move. The remaining 6 Zhu Wus have made their move. Hong Junjindi is in danger. In the void, the spectating swordsman suddenly screamed in terror. This was because the 6 Zhu Wus who had been spectating had joined the battle in an instant. The situation that Gahan was facing had instantly become 100 times more dangerous. When the scales were in a state of absolute balance, even a small straw could break the entire balance. When the 6 Zhu Wus joined the battle, the balance was almost broken. Gohan was instantly in a state of absolute danger. In an instant, countless rule powers hit Gohan's body. The personal shield on Gohan's body visibly lost a chunk of energy. This was an Emperor Sword-level personal shield, which had tens of millions or even hundreds of millions of energy. In terms of absolute energy, it was equivalent to 1/10 of a superdimensional wall system's personal shield. Everyone, don't play with this human anymore. Fuse our rule powers together. At the same time, Dijiang sent his will to the other 11 Grand Sorcerer Ancestors. The moment the will reached them, all 12 Grand Sorcerer Ancestors blasted out their power of the rule at the same time. The power of the rule didn't go straight for Guanghan. Instead, it gathered on its own and entangled with each other like a fried dough twist. In the end, it formed a terrifying power of the rule that combined 12 different powers of the rule at the same time. Boom! The power of the 12 rule powers was extremely terrifying. These powers collided with Guhan's body at the same time, immediately triggering a huge explosion. Then, there was a terrifying shockwave that covered the sky and earth. This was not an ordinary shockwave, but a shockwave of rule powers produced by the entanglement of 12 rule powers. The direct effect of this shockwave was that the entire Yuzhong city's rule powers changed in an instant. The steel became as soft and flowing as water. The withered trees regained their youth and sprouted gold coins. The ruins around them shot into the sky like rockets because the gravity had shifted to the sky. In short, at this moment, the rules of Yuzhong City were reversed chaotically. The world shrouded by the shockwave turned into a grotesque world. All kinds of unimaginable things happened at the same time. The shockwave of the rules was so strong that it even began to directly impact the world inside the void. The entire void began to shake, causing the ordinary people to scream in pain. Fortunately, the power that Gahan used to seal the void was still there. The power that was originally used to trap the sword-bearers had now become a wall that protected the humans, protecting them safely in the void and preventing them from being harmed by the rule shockwave. This human, he should be dead this time. Using such a powerful attack undoubtedly consumed a lot of energy for the 12 Zhu Wu. Therefore, even the 12 Zhu Wu could not help but start to pant after making the decisive blow. However, in the next second, something that infuriated the 12 ancestral sorcerers happened. When the shockwave of the rule dissipated gradually, an egg-like object shining with golden light appeared in front of the 12 ancestral sorcerers at the core of the rule explosion. "What is this?" said Zhu Rong while staring at this golden egg in shock. Following Zhu Rong's voice, the shell of this golden egg began peeling off bit by bit. At last, 2 unharmed human silhouettes emerged from the golden egg. "Master, I came just in time," Lu Shihua said weakly. In Lu Shihua's arms was Gahan, who was tightly hugged. Behind Lu Shihua were 12 wings flashing with pure white light. It was these 12 wings that protected Gahan and Lu Shihua. At the same time, they formed a golden egg and blocked the 12 Zhu Wu's powerful attack. Well, your 12-winged angel sword is indeed unparalleled in the world in terms of defense. In terms of defense, even my sword maiden can't compare to your 12-winged angel sword, Gahan said with a sigh. What Lu Shihua used just now was the ultimate skill of the 12-winged angel sword, Eternal Shelter. Its effect was to defend against all damage, no matter how powerful the damage was. Therefore, even if the 12 Zhu Wu's rule force gathered together, Eternal Shelter could still defend against it. It did not hurt Gahan at all. However, there was one thing that Gahan was very curious about. Eternal Shelter was said to be able to defend against all attacks. However, if it was an existence that surpassed the existence of an Emperor's sword and reached the power of a sage, could Eternal Shelter still defend against the attack of a sage? Master, these Zhu Wu are too shameless. They actually attacked you together. Let me fight alongside you. After the Eternal Shelter ended, Lu Shihua volunteered. Nonsense. This is not a battle you can participate in. Gahan glared at Lu Shihua. Your Eternal Shelter has already been used. Now, even Master can't guarantee your absolute safety. Go into the void immediately and come out when Master summons you. But Master, Lu Shihua was worried and wanted to say something. Go in, Gahan said forcefully. Lu Shihua had no choice but to be sent into the void by Gahan. Human, you are indeed very strong. We, the 12 Zhu Wu, admire the strong. You are worthy of our respect. When the 12 Zhu Wu saw that the 12 rule forces couldn't destroy Gahan, their intention to kill Gahan began to waver. Dijiang took the initiative to speak to Gahan. Human, what I said before still stands. We, the Wu people, are willing to coexist peacefully with your human race. We can even help you when necessary. Get out of our way now, and we will leave immediately. You can leave if you want. Give me back the 200 million lives of our human race. Faced with Dijiang's olive branch, Gahan still said without any hesitation, Human race. We admit that you are strong, but don't be too arrogant. We can still use the attack, just now hundreds of times, but how many times can you use that defensive method of yours? Dijiang's expression also became cold. It's useless to say more. Since you are so strong, then keep fighting. Guhan's expression became even colder. Today, I want to tell everyone, that you have to pay the price for how many lives you have eaten from our human race. Good, Dijiang praised. Although you are very stupid, we, the Wu people, admire you. We respect you as a human hero, so we will send you to the end of a hero. Get ready. Dijiang's thoughts moved again, and the 12 rule forces tangled with the 12 Zhu Wus again. This Hong Jun Jindi, he really is a madman. He doesn't even know when to stop. Another spectating swordsman began to nag, but this time, no one else agreed with him. Faced with Gahan, who was fighting hard with Zhu Wu for the lives of 200 million humans, these swordsmen suddenly began to feel how small and pathetic they were. Their pitiful thoughts were nothing in front of Hong Jun Jiandi's imposing figure. Without Liu Yunling's threat, these swordsmen were already sincerely admiring Gahan. At the same time, everyone's hearts were tangled together. The 12 Zhu Wus didn't know the ability of the Sword of Seraphim, but many of the swordsmen knew it like the back of their hands. If the Sword of Seraphim wanted to use Eternal Shelter again, they would have to wait for 10 minutes. In other words, now that Gahan had lost the protection of Eternal Shelter, how was Gahan going to defend against the 12 Zhu Wu's combined rule forces? Faced with the combined rule forces that were about to attack again, Gahan's reaction was beyond the audience's expectations. Other than the heavenly sword in Gahan's right hand, he pulled out the Douyu sword from its scabbard with his left hand. Both swords were held in Gahan's hands at the same time. 2 swords? What does that mean? Seeing this scene, everyone was a little confused. Even an Emperor sword wielder could only materialize the power of one sword lady at a time. Although it was not impossible to hold another sword lady in the other hand, this sword lady could only exist as a pure sword. Gahan had taken out his Douyu sword at this time. What exactly was he trying to do? No, look at the Douyu sword. There's light flowing on it. That's the power of the sword essence. This sword isn't just for show. It's a sword lady that can fight. The Ghost Palace, Sword Immortal, suddenly shouted in surprise. At that moment, all the swordsmen realized that the heavenly sword and the Douyu sword in Gahan's hands were shining at the same time. This was proof that the sword essence was flowing through the 2 sword ladies. Go! When Gahan took out the 2 sword ladies, the 12 Zhu Wu's combined rule forces were finally completed. Once again, they charged at Gahan. This time, Lu Shihua did not appear. Gohan only crossed the heavenly sword and the Doyu sword in his hands. Then he slashed out two intersecting sword chis in a strange curve. The sword chi and the fused rule power collided directly in the air. Then, the fused rule power, which was incomparably powerful just now, was forcibly cut into four pieces under the attack of the two intersecting sword chi. The pieces flew in four different directions and finally crashed into different mountain ranges. The closest point of impact was 400 kilometers away from Yuzhong City. It was impossible to hurt Gohan. All right, I've tasted your combined rule forces. Now, please have a taste of my yin-yang sword technique and chaos sword technique. This is what it means to return the favor. At that time, all he could think about was how to find Gohan to take revenge and how to defeat Gohan. But now, it seemed that it was impossible for him to even catch up with Gohan's shadow, let alone defeat Gohan. Can His Majesty Hong Jun Jiandi really kill 12 Zhu Wus? A famed Sword Realm sword-bearer couldn't help but ask. I'm afraid that won't be possible. The Sword Immortal of Gue Hall sighed when he heard this question. It can't be. The 12th Witch Ancestor has suffered so many injuries. Isn't it a sign that he's about to be defeated? The famed sword-rank swordsman said. You're a famed Sword Realm sword-bearer, and you've never fought with 12 Zhu Wus. It's not surprising that you don't know about this. The Sword Immortal of Gue Hall sighed. The 12 Zhu Wu's greatest strength is actually their terrifying recovery ability. The Sword Immortal of Gue Hall wasn't wrong. The most terrifying thing about Zhu Wus was indeed not the powerful rule powers that they had mastered, but the terrifying recovery ability of their bodies. Legend had it that the 12 Zhu Wu's bodies came from the ancient god Pangu, and the entire world was created by Pangu. Since the 12 Zhu Wus inherited Panga's body, they also inherited the terrifying recovery ability of Panga's body. Even if they cut a wound big enough to dig out their heart, the wound would automatically heal in less than 10 seconds. Humans had fully experienced this in the fierce battles against the 12 Zhu Wus over the past 4 to 5 years. No matter how serious the damage was caused to the 12 Zhu Wu's body, after 5 minutes, the 12 Zhu Wu's body would automatically heal itself as if it had never been injured. It was precisely because of this that humans had no choice but to come up with a quick and concentrated decapitation strategy. Thanks to the terrifying attack power of the human Dao Sword Lady, they were able to kill one of the Zhu Wu's bodies in a short period of time, even with Liu Yinling's power. If they were given enough time, the wounds would automatically heal themselves. What the 12 Grand Sorcerer Ancestors did next proved the Sword Immortal of Gue Palace's words. When the 12 Grand Sorcerer Ancestors saw that they and their brothers were covered in blood and wounds, they suddenly unleashed their power of the natural order toward their opponents, forming a link that looked like a ring. As the power of the rule connected, the hundreds of wounds left by Gohan on the 12 Zhu Wu's body began to heal at a speed visible to the naked eye. Zhu Wu's blood began to flow back into the wounds. In just 10 seconds, all the wounds left by Gohan had disappeared, and the 12 Zhu Wu's powerful body became perfect again. This won't do. Gohan can't break the 12 Zhu Wu's healing ability. Seeing this, the Sword Immortal of Gue Hall clenched his fists and said, he really wanted to rush out of the void and tell Gohan to stop attacking separately. Instead, he wanted to concentrate all his strength and kill one Zhu Wu first. Unfortunately, Gohan in the sky didn't seem to have any intention of doing so. He just looked at the 12 Zhu Wu's body that had returned to its perfect state. Human, you're really strong to be able to force us to use the 12 Zhu Wu's power to heal ourselves. However, as you can see, it's impossible for you to defeat us. Zhu Wu Dijiang said to Gohan. Also, don't think about concentrating your strength to kill one of us like before. To be honest, the reason why that human of yours could kill us in this way was because we purposely revealed our weakness. It's just a flaw that we've deliberately revealed. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been able to find a reasonable reason to lose to you and allow the 13th Grand Wizard to swallow our Grand Wizard's blood orb without worry. As long as the 12 of us stand together and combine our power of rules, all our injuries could be healed instantly. Even if that woman uses her terrifying power again, she won't be able to kill us, unless you can unleash a power that's 12 times stronger than that woman. Zhuwu Dijiang didn't mind revealing the 12 Zhuwu's abilities and trump cards. However, after hearing these abilities and trump cards, the surrounding sword bearers became even more desperate. Liu Nianling's power was obtained by sacrificing a year of the lifespan of 400 million humans. If this power was multiplied by 12 times, wouldn't all humans have to sacrifice 12 years of their lifespan? Even if humans were willing to make such a huge sacrifice, Gahan wasn't Liu Nianling. Without the human sword lady, he couldn't unleash such a terrifying attack. As for Liu Nianling, who could use the human sword lady, she already looked like an old woman. To bear the human's lifespan, she also had to pay the price of her own lifespan. She had borne it 7 times before, which had turned Liu Nianling from a powerhouse at her peak into an old lady who looked like she was in her 70s or 80s. Now, Liu Nianling might not even be able to bear a year of the lifespan of 400 million humans. Why don't we negotiate for peace? The 12 Zhuwus are really like sticky candy. If we continue to fight like this, once Hong Jun Jiandi consumes all the sword elements, we humans will really be finished. Another sword bearer had such a thought. Human, I'll tell you again, we, the Wu people, have no intention of fighting with you humans. We just want to find a place to live quietly and reproduce the Wu people again. Please get out of the way. Zhuwu's Dijiang extended an olive branch again. In that case, I'll add a little seasoning for you. Facing the 12 Zhuwu's terrifying recovery ability, Gahan didn't have any expression of fear. Instead, he said with a smile, "Seasoning?" The 12 Zhuwus felt a little baffled. He had no idea what Gahan was talking about. At the next moment, Gahan's action made the 12 Zhuwus even more baffled. This was because Gahan took out a piece of flesh from his dimensional pocket. Then, this piece of flesh in Gahan's hand shattered into countless pieces and was evenly scattered on the 2 sword ladies by Gahan. What the hell is this? Is this piece of flesh the seasoning? The sword bearers looked at the scene in front of them dumbfoundedly. At the same time, they thought to themselves, if this piece of flesh was the seasoning that Gahan was talking about, then wouldn't the 2 sword ladies that Gahan sprinkled with seasoning be Gahan's dishes? Could it be that Gahan wanted to eat the 2 sword ladies? The sword bearers didn't have time to think too much, because in the next moment, Gahan and the 12 Zhuwus fought again. After more than 10 minutes of bloody battle, the 12 Zhuwu's body was once again covered with hundreds of wounds. However, when the 12 Zhuwus prepared to transfer the 12 Zhuwu's rule force to each other and then see his body return to its perfect state, the 12 Zhuwu was horrified to find that his body was exactly the same as before. Not only did the wounds not show any signs of healing, but they were torn even more violently. Chapter 1458. The 12 Zhuwu panicked and kept using his Zhuwu power, but the wounds still showed no signs of healing. Instead, it got bigger and bigger as time went by. The blood flowing from the wound had almost drowned half of the core area, and a huge lake of blood was gradually forming under the 12 Zhuwu's feet. The blood was flowing from the 12 Zhuwu's wounds. Could it be caused by the flesh that Gahan sprinkled on the sword just now? The 12 Zhuwu suddenly thought of the seasoning that Gahan had mentioned just now and said in a sudden realization, "Human race, what kind of vicious flesh and blood did you sprinkle on your sword just now? Is this the flesh and blood of a primordial innate demon god?" The Zhuwu questioned Gahan in anger and fear. In the 12 Zhuwu's mind, only the flesh and blood of the legendary innate demon god could hinder his body's recovery ability. What innate demon god? I've never heard of it. Gahan smiled and then directly took out a piece of flesh that was exactly the same as before from his dimensional pocket and said, This is just an ordinary piece of pork. Pork? The 12 Zhu Wu was stunned at first, and then he was enraged. Human race. At this time, why do you still use such a despicable thing to insult us? Even if we are opponents, you can't humiliate us like this. The Zhu Wu scolded. In the 12 Zhu Wu's mind, Gohan was clearly lying to them when he said that the piece of flesh was pork. At the same time, he was also insulting them in this way. Even the flesh and blood of a pig could make the 12 Zhu Wu lose their terrifying recovery ability. Wasn't this mocking the 12 Zhu Wus that they were inferior to pigs? I really didn't lie to you. This is really just pork. Gohan shrugged his shoulders and said helplessly. To be honest, Gohan did not lie to the 12 Zhu Wus. The flesh, just now, was really just pork, but Gohan attached some interesting things to the powdered pork. Do you still remember when Gohan constructed a small world with fragments of his consciousness in his dimensional pocket? Gohan used ordinary pork and his consciousness fragments to build a complete world on a small scale. In fact, Gohan was just repeating the same trick. He mixed a trace of his consciousness fragments on the pork and produced countless creatures at the same time. These creatures were sprinkled on Gohan's sword and then left on Zhu Wu's wounds through Gohan's sword. Under Gohan's control, they constantly attacked Zhu Wu's wounds. Hence, the piece of flesh just now was indeed just a piece of pork. The ones that caused fatal damage to the wizard ancestor were the fragments of consciousness that had evolved from the flesh. No, big brother, no. Use Panga's force to feel those wounds. Zhu Wu's Gomong suddenly said in shock. Zhu Wu's Dijiang was stunned and immediately used the most precious Panga's force in his body to feel these wounds. Then, Dijiang discovered that countless tiny creatures were frantically tearing at his wounds. There were more than 10 million of these tiny creatures. At the same time, because of these tiny creatures tearing at his wounds, no matter how hard he tried to heal them, they would be torn apart by these creatures at the same time. As a result, they couldn't heal at all. What was even more terrifying was that these tiny creatures could constantly absorb the flesh that belonged to Zhu Wu and use it to strengthen their bodies. Therefore, as time passed, these tiny creatures grew larger and larger and caused more and more damage to Zhu Wu's wounds. This was the root cause of Zhu Wu's wounds that couldn't heal and were constantly expanding. Zhu Wu's Xianming also sensed the existence of these tiny creatures and couldn't help but ask Zhu Wu's Dijiang, "Big brother, is this some kind of poisonous insect?" No, it's not a poisonous insect. It's the chaos thought. This human has actually mastered the chaos thought. Zhu Wu's Dijiang suddenly said in extreme fear. This sentence also made the rest of the Zhu Wu's fall into a state of extreme fear. This human has mastered the chaos thought. Is this human already a saint? Zhu Wu's Zhurong cried out in shock. No, this human isn't a saint yet. Otherwise, we would already be dead. Dijiang hurriedly said, I heard that the chaos thought is the only way to become a saint. Mastering the chaos thought is already half a step into the saint realm. This human should be in this state right now. Then what should we do? Damn it. Could it be that humans were the eternal protagonists of this world? Why is there an existence that is half a step into the saint realm among humans? Are we Wu people going to repeat the mistakes of the past? Zhu Wu's Gong Gong said helplessly and sorrowfully. It's not to this extent. Zhu Wu's Dijiang said coldly. But this human must die. Otherwise, our plan of exterminating humans and reviving the Wu people and making the Wu people the protagonists of this world won't be able to come true. Originally, I thought that all the saints were dead. Therefore, this is a great opportunity bestowed to us, the Wu people. It's a sign that the gods want us, the Wu people, to become the protagonists of this world again. However, I didn't expect that there would be an existence that is half a step into the saint realm among humans. Then, he will be the biggest obstacle for us, the Wu people. Therefore, this time we must kill him, eliminate all future troubles. But how are we going to kill this human? He's already half a step into the realm of a sage. There's no way we can kill him. As long as he has the chaos myriad thoughts, he can be revived. How are we going to kill him? Ancestral wizard Gomong asked in despair. No, Only a saint can resurrect with just a primal chaos thought. This human definitely can't do it now. This is our only chance. Zhu Wu's Dijiang suddenly had an extremely serious expression on his face. He looked at the other 12 Zhu Wus and gulped. Brothers and sisters, it seems like we have to use the 12 Divine Fiends formation. 12 Divine Fiends formation? The other 12 Zhu Wus were stunned. They never expected to hear this name from Dijiang. They never thought that they would reach the point where they had to use the 12 Divine Fiends formation. However, on second thought, this seemed to be the only way. Only the 12 Divine Fiends formation would have the chance to kill an existence that is half a step into the saint realm. All right, the 12 Zhu Wus' thoughts exchanged at the same time and instantly made up their minds. The above conversation seemed to have gone on for a long time, but it was actually just an exchange of thoughts between the 12 Zhu Wus. From start to finish, it took less than a second. Therefore, in the eyes of the spectators, after the 12 Zhu Wus questioned Gahan, the 12 Zhu Wus suddenly began to spread out in 12 different directions. They no longer gathered together like before. This made the spectators feel a little strange. If the 12 Zhu Wus didn't gather together and instead fought separately, wouldn't the 12 Zhu Wus suddenly start to spread out in 12 different directions? Wouldn't that repeat the previous mistake of being defeated by Gahan one by one? However, right after that, the 12 Zhu Wus stopped in an instant. If there was someone who understood the innate tendency to lose here, they would realize that the 12 Zhu Wus were standing in the 12 Dutian positions. The 12 Zhu Wus were obviously about to use an extremely terrifying formation. Immediately after that, something even more unimaginable happened. The 12 Zhu Wus' bodies actually disappeared in an instant. In fact, they didn't really disappear, because after the 12 Zhu Wus' bodies disappeared, they were replaced by 12 huge flags that stood upright in 12 different directions. The moment these flags took shape, the top of the flags was like a high-pressure water gun, and endless bright red blood began to gush out. The 12 streams of blood collided in the air and finally gathered together, condensing out of thin air. At this moment, a human body made of blood that was even larger than the 12 Zhu Wus slowly took shape. Oh my God, what the hell is this? Seeing this scene in front of them, the sword bearers in the void had a dumbfounded look on their faces. Although they didn't know what the 12 Zhu Wus' blood had gathered to form, they could imagine that this thing that the 12 Zhu Wus were trying to fuse with their own blood must be unprecedented. This is the legendary Great 12 Divine Fiend formation. As he watched the majestic and terrifying figure gradually take shape, Gahan didn't have the slightest intention of stopping it. Instead, his entire body began to tremble uncontrollably with excitement. This was what Gahan wanted, and it was also the most crucial step for Gahan to perfect the next part of his plan. In other words, this great 12 Divine Fiend formation had actually been deliberately guided by Gahan to let the 12 Zhu Wus use. Although Gahan's goal had been achieved, he didn't have the slightest idea of how to deal with this monster that was about to be born. Although this monster had been forced out by Gahan, Gahan didn't know whether he could defeat it and obtain what he wanted in the end. This was because Gahan simply didn't know how terrifying the true strength of this soon-to-be-born primogenitor of the heavens and earth would be. If the extent of its terror exceeded Gahan's expectations, then even Gahan would probably be dead. But this was a path that Gahan had no choice but to take, because Gahan knew that he didn't have much time left. What? Xiaoyu is still in Yuzhong City. Liu Ling looked at the woman in front of her, who was already extremely weak, and shouted loudly, losing her composure. I'm sorry. Xiaoyu said that she was about to give birth, so she wanted to go to the hospital to find a medical pod to help her deliver the baby. But there were too many people, and we were separated. I really can't find her. Your Majesty, I beg you, save Xiaoyu. That's right. Hurry and tell Master that Xiaoyu still has his child in her stomach. Wen Meiyin tightly held onto Liu Ling's hand as she pleaded. I'm afraid it's too late. It's already a wasteland outside. No one could have survived. Liu Ling looked helplessly at Yuzhong City, which had been completely turned into a wasteland by the battle between Gahan and the 12 Zhu Wu. Under such a terrifying battle and the impact of the power of rules, unless Xiaoyu was an emperor sword wielder, it was impossible for her to survive. "I'm sorry. My condolences." Liu Ling poured a bottle of nanocapsule into Wen Meiyun's stomach, and then said helplessly to Wen Meiyun. At this time, Liu Ling did not intend to tell this news to Gahan. At this time, the battle between Gahan and the 12 Zhu Wu had reached its most crucial moment. If Gahan knew that his own son was likely to die by his hands, who knew what would happen to Gahan? Chapter 1459. The 12 Zhu Wus have actually fused together. Seeing the blood of the 12 Zhu Wus fusing into an even larger humanoid creature, the sword-bearers in the void exclaimed in horror. What on earth have they fused into? Could it be that Yingzheng has been reformed? Another sword-wielder guessed. No, I'm afraid this isn't Yingzheng, but the legendary Pangu. Longsure Jindi said hesitantly, looking at the monster formed by the 12 divine fiends formation. Pangu? What kind of Yuan Ko is that? How come I've never heard of this name? Many sword-bearers shook their heads, indicating that they had never heard of this name. That is the legendary existence who once split heaven and earth apart and created the entire world. At some point, Liu Ling had returned to the group of sword-bearers, but behind her was Wen Meiyun, who seemed to be in a daze. It seems that Yingzheng was right. The 12 Zhu Wus were indeed split from Pangu's body, and now they have actually fused Pangu together. Liu Ling said, clenching her fists. She knew that Gahan was facing a great crisis this time. Pangu, looking at the enormous existence in front of him, whose head held up the sky and feet stood on the ground, as if supporting the entire world, Gahan couldn't help but look up at it. Under the effect of the 12 divine fiends formation, the fused Pangu seemed to have lost its nature as a living creature. Its body was emitting dense smoke, and its eyes were pitch black. After letting out a series of thunderous gasps, all the objects around Pangu floated up in the air in an instant. Then, under Gahan's astonished gaze, all these ruins flew into Pangu's hands and started changing at a speed visible to the naked eye. The change was the change of the original substance itself. These were the ruins of buildings, plastics, broken airships, and even some human corpses and flesh. But now, these ruins, which were composed of thousands of different materials, directly turned into the same material, a jet black metal that looked like black gold. More and more materials began to gather in Pangu's hand. Finally, when more than half of the ruins of Yuzhong City were gathered in Pangu's hand, the gathering finally stopped. At the same time, an axe the same size as Pangu appeared in Pangu's hand. Pangu had directly changed the nature of most of the objects in the ruins of Yuzhong City. From more than 30 million different substances, they had all been changed into the same substance. Finally, they had combined into the huge axe in Pangu's hand, which was the legendary Pangu axe. Boom! Pangu still did not speak, but Pangu had already moved. Pangu raised the axe in his hand high, and then chopped down at Gahan in front of him. Pangu's attack speed is so slow. It looks like it's moving in slow motion. How can such an attack hit Hong Junjindi? Seeing Pangu's attack, the sword bearers, who had their hearts in their throats just now, were instantly relieved. Because Pangu's attack speed was way too slow, it took him a full 10 seconds to make a downward slash. Even an ordinary human could easily dodge such a slash, not to mention Gahan, who had a terrifying agility. In everyone's mind, even if Gahan had 2 broken legs, he could still easily avoid Pangu's attack, not to mention that Gahan was now in his peak state. But in everyone's eyes, Gahan stayed where he was, motionless, and then the axe chopped down on Gahan's body. Gahan was instantly smashed to the ground, creating a huge cloud of dust that covered the whole world. What's going on? Why didn't Hong Junjini dodge? He dodged it. Everyone looked at the scene in front of them in disbelief. They could not understand why Gahan didn't dodge Pangu's attack when Pangu's attack speed was so slow. Of course, they would not think that Gahan was a fool who did not know how to fight. Otherwise, Gahan, who had defeated 12 Zhu Wu with his own strength, would not be able to fight back. Something that they did not know must have happened during the battle, so that Gahan could not dodge Panga's attack at all. Gahan, Liu Ling called out worriedly. At that moment, the smoke began to gradually disperse and settle on the ground again. Everyone saw that Gahan was still standing in the same place, and he was lying on the ground like a dead dog. The sharp-eyed sword-bearers were horrified to find that Gahan, who was lying on the ground, only had half of his body left. The other half of his body had disappeared from his neck. Golden flesh and messy internal organs were scattered on the ground. He looked like a slaughtered pig. Gahan, seeing this, Liu Ling felt her vision go black, and then she fainted. When a human's body was cut to such an extent, and there was no medical pod nearby that could heal him in time, even if he was an Emperor's sword-bearer, he was basically sentenced to death. Look, Hong Jun Jindi is not dead yet. His body is healing quickly. A sword-bearer's joyful voice pulled Liu Ling back from her coma. Liu Ling hurriedly looked at Gahan, who was lying on the ground. She was shocked to find that the remaining half of Gahan's body was growing rapidly. The flesh and blood were growing continuously. In less than 10 seconds, half of Gahan's body had grown back. Other than looking a little embarrassed and naked, he was no different from a normal human. Oh my God, such a powerful healing ability. This healing ability is comparable to Zhu Wu's healing ability. Seeing this, many sword-bearers felt that their eyes had been blinded again. They never dared to imagine that a human, even an Emperor's sword-bearer, could have such a terrifying physical healing ability. Fortunately, I have a consciousness fragment. Otherwise, I would have died just now. Having regrown half of his body, Gahan, who had been resurrected, controlled his trembling muscles and slowly sat up from the ground. It was true that Pangu had split him into two with his axe. If Gahan had not used the consciousness fragment to control his body's rapid recovery, Gahan would have died. This was the terrifying power of the consciousness fragment. Even if he had lost half of his body, he could completely recover within 10 seconds. This was a terrifying recovery speed that even a 12-year-old Zhu Wu could not achieve. According to Gu Han's estimation, if he could improve his control over the fragment of consciousness, then even if there was only a small fragment of consciousness left, he would be able to completely restore his entire body. This was the terror of someone who was half a step into the saint realm, an existence that was almost completely undying. However, although Gahan, who was half a step into the saint realm, was terrifying, Pangu, who was in front of Gahan, was the most terrifying existence. Pangu's axe strike just now had frightened Gahan. In everyone's eyes, Gahan stayed in the air like an idiot, letting Pangu cut him into two with his axe. However, if someone could share what Gahan had sensed at this moment, that person would be horrified to find that it was not that Gahan did not want to run, but that he had nowhere to run. Just now, the moment Pangu wielded his axe, Gahan had already started running. He boosted his speed to an extreme, trying to get away from Pangu's attack range within a moment. In Gahan's senses, he had indeed boosted his speed to an extreme, and he could even see the surrounding scenery changing quickly. However, when Gahan stopped, he was shocked to find that he was still standing in the same spot, without moving even an inch. At first, Gahan thought that this was an illusion, but soon, Gahan found out that this wasn't an illusion. His body had indeed been moving at an extreme speed. However, the space around him seemed to have been fixed, as if the space he was in had been separated from the space of the earth. This was a mysterious feeling, and even now, Gahan couldn't clearly explain what had happened. However, the only thing Gahan knew was that he couldn't run away from Pangu's axe at all. He could only be cut into two by Pangu's axe, and there was no other ending for him. Fortunately, Pangu didn't seem to be able to use such a terrifying attack at will. Otherwise, when Gahan was healing his body, Pangu launched another strike at Gahan, and half of Gahan's body would be paralyzed. In fact, Pangu stood still, letting Gahan heal his body. However, As soon as Gahan finished healing, Pangu waved the Pangu axe in his hand again. This battle was a complete replica of the previous one. Facing Pangu's axe, Gahan also lost the ability to escape. He watched helplessly as Pangu's axe cut his body in half again. This time, half of Gahan's head was also split open, and snow-white brain juice flowed directly from Gahan's skull. This was an injury that even the medical cabin at the Immortal Sword tier could not heal. The minimum requirement for a medical cabin at the Immortal Sword tier was to keep a head, but half of Gahan's head was gone. Could Gahan really come back to life again? Master! At this time, under a sand dune not far away, a pair of eyes was watching everything that was happening not far away. Crystal tears flowed from the corners of her eyes. She wanted to rush up and help her master, who only had half a head left, but she couldn't move. Her body had been completely buried by the sand dune. Chapter 1460. Long Xiaoya did not know why she was buried under this sand dune. She felt that her abdomen was constantly beating, and, at the same time, a sense of swelling kept wandering in her body. Long Xiaoya knew that she was about to give birth. This was the child in her stomach telling her that it wanted to come out. Therefore, Long Xiaoya decided to go to a nearby hospital to get a medical cabin to help her give birth on the way. As a result, when she changed directions, she was washed away by the surging crowd. Long Xiaoya suddenly could not find her mother anymore. What was even more tragic was that Long Xiaoya, who had a big belly, was suddenly knocked to the ground by a man running fast. She tried hard to stand up, but more people behind her did not care about the existence of a pregnant woman on the ground. Some people even directly stepped over Long Xiaoya's protruding belly. The great pain directly made Long Xiaoya faint. When Long Xiaoya woke up again, she was already buried under a large pile of sand dune. If it were not for a hurricane that happened to blow away the sand dune that buried Long Xiaoya's head, Long Xiaoya would have suffocated under the sand dune. But now, Long Xiaoya's situation was not much better. Her abdomen was still pressed by a large amount of sand, and what was more terrifying was that waves of pain inside her abdomen kept rushing at Long Xiaoya's nerves. Just when Long Xiaoya was about to faint again from the pain, she saw the scene of Gahan being split in half by Pangu's huge painting. She also saw Guhan's brain splattering like an exploding coconut. Long Xiaoya could not accept the scene in front of her at all. This heart-wrenching roar. And with this roar, Long Xiaoya instantly felt that her stomach was lighter. This feeling was as if the feces that had accumulated for 20 years were all poured out at this moment. I gave birth. Long Xiaoya, who was in the abyss of suffering, suddenly realized that the child that had been in her stomach for 20 years was finally born. At the moment when his father died, he was born, resurrected. Hong Junjindi is not dead yet, he is still alive. His head is recovering. When the sword-bearer saw Gahan's head split in half and his brains splattering everywhere, they thought that Gahan was completely dead. Unexpectedly, in just a few seconds, Gahan's head had completed self-repair, and the rest of his body was still recovering rapidly. Perhaps it was because he had deliberately repaired his head, but his recovery speed seemed to be a lot slower than before. After 10 seconds, only half of Gahan's body had been repaired. But 10 seconds passed, and Pangu attacked again. Once again, Gahan was unable to dodge and was cleaved into two halves by the Pangu axe, and this time, Gahan only had 1/4 of his body left. 10 seconds passed, and the scene of Gahan being cleaved into two by Pangu's axe kept repeating. Although Gahan was extremely strong and tried to repair his body every time, the recovery speed of Gahan's body continued to slow down. However, the recovery speed of Gahan's body was slowing down, while Pangu's attack speed was always maintained at the rate of one attack every 10 seconds. What was more frightening was that Pangu would always aim at Gahan's head first. Therefore, every time Gahan finally repaired his head would immediately be chopped into pieces by Pangu's axe. The whole scene was like a ridiculous video replay. Don't do this. Liu Ling sat weakly in the void. Seeing Guhan's head being chopped into pieces again and again, Liu Ling felt extremely painful in her heart. She even thought that Guhan should just die like this, which was much better than constantly suffering the pain of being chopped into pieces. My child, Mommy must save you. You are Daddy's only child. Mommy must save you. Long Xiaoya, who was buried in the thick sand dunes, began to struggle to save herself. Or rather, she began to struggle to save her child. Long Xiaoya could feel the fragile life between her legs, but the sand dunes had already filled up the gap between her legs. If she did not let her child escape from the sand dunes, he would be suffocated to death by the sand dunes. No matter how fragile a woman was, after becoming a mother, she would have unimaginable power. Therefore, Long Xiaoya's body began to move even though she was buried under hundreds of kilograms of sand. Long Xiaoya slightly bent her legs upwards, hoping to use this to create a small space for her child to breathe. At the same time, Long Xiaoya's buried hands also erupted with unbelievable power, pushing the sand away bit by bit. In the end, when the sand that was buried in Long Xiaoya's hands was completely pushed away, Long Xiaoya's hands were finally freed, which also meant that the upper half of Long Xiaoya's body was freed. Digging the sand, Long Xiaoya began to frantically dig the sand around her lower body. As the thick layer of sand was gradually dug away, a smooth little head covered in wet, grayish-black, and extremely soft fetal hair finally appeared in front of Long Xiaoya. Child, my child! Long Xiaoya grabbed her child's head, then forcefully pulled it out as if she was pulling a carrot. This newborn little life finally struggled out from the edge of death and saw the sun from this world for the first time. Child, my child! Long Xiaoya used all her strength to raise her child to the highest point, letting her child face the rising sun and let out its first loud cry since coming to this world. I can't make it. I really shouldn't have taken such a risk. Guhan's consciousness was actually a little chaotic at this time. Every time his body was repaired, it was not without consumption. Every time, there would be fragments of Guhan's consciousness disappearing. Although Guhan had billions of fragments of consciousness, in order to destroy 12 Zhu Wu's recovery ability, Guhan had already consumed a lot of fragments of consciousness. And every time he tried to resurrect his body, as many as tens of millions of fragments of consciousness would disappear. Just when Guhan was left with less than 100 million fragments of consciousness, he would completely lose the ability to resurrect after 2 or 3 more such attacks, and really die under Panga's axe. A loud cry faintly reached Guhan's ears. This is life. A child was actually born in such an environment. Guhan thought incredulously. He thought that everyone had died, but he never thought that there would be a survivor around him, and this survivor actually tenaciously gave birth to a new life. Child, I'm sorry. It's all my fault. There was a bit of regret in Guhan's heart. The pregnant woman who was unwilling to escape into the void might have been looking for trouble and seeking her own death, but the child in her belly was innocent. He deserved such a fate. It was Guhan who harmed him. But this child's voice is so familiar. I seem to have heard such a voice in my dream. When did I hear it? It gives me a feeling of being haunted by it. Guhan was probably somewhat obsessed with the child's cry. He tilted his head, wanting his ears to hear the child's cry more clearly. Naturally, Guhan felt something fall on his head, but it did not attack his body. Then his body flew out under the effect of some kind of impact. That was the attack of Panga's axe just now. Guhan, who was flying in the air, thought, I actually avoided the attack of Panga's axe. This time, Panga's axe actually did not attack me. Thinking of this, Guhan's entire consciousness trembled, and then his consciousness, which was about to completely dissipate, completely recovered. Guhan suddenly realized that he could move. His head had just successfully avoided the attack of Panga's axe, and his body could move. Why is this happening? Although Guhan's heart was full of such doubts, he did not have time to think about it. The remaining fragments of consciousness began to frantically repair his body. At the same time, Guhan's eyes stared at the blade of Panga's axe, while silently counting the time in his heart. 10, 7, 4, 1. In fact, Gahan did not need it, because the speed at which Pangu swung the axe was not fast. The moment Pangu once again raised the axe, Gahan once again heard the loud cry of the baby. Guhan's body, which had just been repaired, rolled on the ground in a strange posture, and then Pangu's axe fell on the position where Gahan was just now. Guhan once again successfully avoided the attack of Pangu's axe. And this time, the remaining 10 seconds were enough for Gahan to repair the rest of his body. Gahan barely supported his new body to stand up from the ground, watching the tall Pangu once again raise the axe in his hand. Clang. This time, Gahan still did not escape, but Pangu's axe did not attack Gahan's body either, because Gahan simultaneously raised 2 sword ladies high in his hands, crossed them, and forcibly blocked the blade of Pangu's axe. So it is the power of creation. Only the power of creation of life can break through Pangu's seal. At the moment when Pangu's axe was blocked, Gahan's heart was clear. The remaining tens of millions of fragments of consciousness, at this moment, all seemed to have become seeds full of life, blooming a tender breath of life against the cold sun. Finally, I can see my path clearly. Such a sigh gushed out from Gahan's heart. At the moment of life and death, Gahan finally got a small part of what he wanted, and the rest of the things were placed in front of him for him to take. At the critical moment, it was this loud cry that not only changed the fate of Gahan, but also the fate of the entire human race. Chapter 1461. My child, Long Xiaoya, who was struggling hard, suddenly felt that her hand had loosened. She knew that her child had been taken away. She immediately wanted to break free from the sand dune in horror and take back her child. However, after losing her child, it was as if Long Xiaoya had lost all her strength. She could no longer break free from the sand dunes. Just as Long Xiaoya was feeling hopeless, her body suddenly felt light. The sand dunes that were pressing down on her had all disappeared. She had regained her freedom once again. Master! At this time, Long Xiaoya finally saw clearly who had saved her from the sand dune. She looked at Gahan in front of her with joy. After 20 years, she finally saw her master again. Master, aren't you? Long Xiaoya suddenly remembered the scene of Gahan being cut in half by the giant axe. She immediately wanted to ask something in a panic. However, Gahan's hand gently placed on Long Xiaoya's forehead and said faintly, "Don't ask now. Let's change places first." Long Xiaoya did not understand what was going on. She felt herself being hugged by the cold, and the next moment, she was moved to another place. Long Xiaoya looked back at the sand dune where she had been lying. The huge Pangu axe had already chopped down on the place where she had been lying, and the entire sand dune had turned into ashes. If Gahan had been a second late, Long Xiaoya would have been the one who would have been split in half. Master! Long Xiaoya was so scared that her heart was about to jump out of her throat. Gahan said with a smile, "Don't panic. It was just a fake stupid thing. It was easy to avoid. Master, it's good that you are okay. Xiaoya's life and death are not important. It's good that you are okay," Long Xiaoya said with a sobbing tone. It had been more than 20 years. With the appearance of Gahan, so many years of grievances and pain seemed to have disappeared. "It's okay. It's okay now." Gahan comforted her again. Then he looked at the baby in his arms. The baby's hair had not yet been removed. Looking at the baby's face, which was somewhat similar to his own, he already understood. "This is my child." Long Xiao nodded her head vigorously. Then she suddenly thought of something and said in a panic, "Master, please don't misunderstand. I didn't do anything to let you down. This child was conceived when you left. I don't know why it stayed in my stomach for 20 years until you appeared today. I really didn't do anything wrong to you." Long Xiaoya thought that Gahan suspected that the child was not his own. This was a very normal concern. After all, Gahan had been missing for 20 years. Who would believe that a child born 20 years later would still be his own flesh and blood? Say no more. From the moment I heard this child crying, I knew it was my child because it sounded exactly the same as when I was a child, said Gahan gently. Then he hugged Long Xiaoya, who was in a panic and moved again. Pangu's Pangu axe smashed on the place where Gahan had been standing just now. This place feels like it's connected by blood. This is my child. Guhan placed his hand on the baby's chest. As his father's hand pressed on the baby's chest, the baby who had been crying all this while quieted down in an instant. Then, the baby let out a giggle and seemed to be very happy. I didn't think I had a son. Looking at his own flesh and blood in his arms, Gahan couldn't help but sigh. This child was something that Gahan had never thought of. He didn't think that he had a son besides Gu Xuanwu. If he hadn't come back in time, this child would have died in this battlefield, and he would have regretted it for the rest of his life. This child, does he have a name? Asked Gahan, after teasing his own flesh and blood for a while holding Long Xiaoya in his arms and changing positions. Not yet. This is Master's flesh and blood. I dare not name him, said Long Xiaoya with her head down. Nonsense. You are the child's mother, and you have been pregnant with him for 20 years. Of course, you have the right to name him. How about this? You decide the child's name, said Gahan in an irrefutable manner. Then can I call him Gufan? Long Xiaoya said hesitantly. I hope that this child can live an ordinary life. Oh. Gahan looked at Long Xiaoya with some surprise. Gahan was also familiar with Long Xiaoya's nature, and he was puzzled by Long Xiaoya's name. Don't you like a vigorous life the most? Do you want to be a vigorous woman? After all, 20 years. People will change. I don't want to think about anything else anymore. I just want to be able to protect my child and live the rest of my life normally. Long Xiaoya said from the bottom of her heart. Gufan. Guhan looked at the child who was still giggling, carried Long Xiaoya to another place, and then sighed. Let's call him Gufan. But I'm afraid this child won't be able to spend the rest of his life in an ordinary way. After all, he's my son. Guhan's eyes widened in shock. What is Hong Jun Jiandi doing? Why is he chatting with a woman? Everyone watched as Hong Jun stood up from the ground with a newborn child in his arms. He was chatting with the child's mother while casually dodging Panga's axe. Everyone was completely confused. They couldn't understand why the situation had suddenly changed 180 degrees. It was as if it had become a romantic drama. The great Jiandi was in a life or death situation, and in the middle of his final battle with the big boss, he actually started to talk with a woman. No matter how they looked at it, this was the standard plot of a romantic drama. Of course, there were some who looked at Liu Ling with a strange gaze. Everyone knew that Liu Jiandi's favorite man was the sword immortal Hong Jun, who had disappeared for 20 years. The current Hong Jun Jiandi. And in these 20 years, Liu Jiandi had continuously protected Hong Jun Jiandi. Everyone treated Liu Jiandi as Hong Jun Jiandi's wife, even though the two of them had never had an official relationship. Now that Gahan was suddenly being affectionate with this pregnant woman, wouldn't Frost Jiandi explode with anger? Unexpectedly, although Frost Jiandi's face was a bit sour, her emotions were very stable. She didn't look angry at all. Instead, it felt as if she had let out a long sigh. This made everyone feel very strange. Don't make wild guesses. I know this pregnant woman. She's Hong Jun Jiandi's personal maid. Of course, there were also people who knew the truth. After all, Long Xiaoya had a bit of a reputation in Yuzhong City. There were quite a few people who knew that she was Gahan's personal maid. So she's his personal maid. Everyone revealed an expression of understanding. But soon after, they said with a bit of disgust, but this personal maid is really annoying. She actually dared to betray her master and have a child with another man. This Hong Jun Jiandi is a bit too magnanimous. He wore such a big green hat on his head, and he didn't even have the slightest reaction. If it were me, I would have thrown this damned woman under Panga's axe and killed this shameless bitch. One of the swordsmen angrily said. He felt as if he had been made a green hat. What do you know? The insider looked at the swordsman with disdain. This child was planted before Hong Jun Jiandi disappeared. This personal maid has already been pregnant for 20 years. It's a super strange story in Yuzhong City. We never understood why this child refused to come out no matter what. But now we finally understand. This child was waiting for its father to be born. The insider sighed. Long Xiaoya's story quickly spread among all humans. Long Xiaoya instantly became a legendary figure that everyone knew. Master, let's leave this place. It's not good to keep hiding like this. Every 10 seconds, Long Xiaoya was hugged by Gahan and dodged Panga's axe. She was probably very worried as she spoke. It's okay. This Pangu is just a fake. It's not a powerful thing. As long as you can see through his axe, it's just a useless fool. Gohan looked at Pangu disdainfully and said. Then he touched his son's forehead and sighed. But it's all thanks to this child. If it weren't for this child crying, I might have died. It's my son who saved me. Gohan lifted Gu Fan, who was in his arms, high up, just like the classic action in the anime The Lion King. Coincidentally, the moment Gu Fan was lifted up, a golden parabola shot out from Gu Fan's little bird and hit his father's face. Long Xiaoyu was shocked by this sudden change, while Gahan laughed. At the moment when his face was hit, Gahan felt that he had really become a father. It's time to solve this problem. I'll leave the child to you. Gohan put Gu Fan back into Long Xiaoya's hands. Then he pulled in the void. Lu Shihua, who still had a few tears on his face, walked out of the void. Just now, because Lu Shihua rashly rushed out of the void to save him and died under the attack of Panga's axe, Gahan directly imprisoned Lu Shihua in the void. It was only at this moment that Lu Shihua was released. Judging from Lu Shihua's tear-stained face, Lu Shihua must have shed a lot of tears just now. Gohan's decision to imprison Lu Shihua was extremely correct. Good disciple, Master Son and Xiaoyu are in your hands. You have to protect the two of them, understand? Gohan said to Long Xiaoya. Yes, as long as disciple is alive, Master and Master's wife will be safe. Lu Shihua said solemnly. Okay. Gohan nodded, then hesitated for a while and said, Don't call her Master's wife. Just call her Miss Xiaoya. Lu Shihua looked at Gohan in surprise, and Long Xiaoya lowered her head as if she had accepted her fate. Chapter 1462. Now, it's time to take care of you, you stupid thing. After sending Long Xiaoya and Gu Fan away, Gohan coldly looked at Pangu, who was standing in front of him. If he couldn't free himself from Pangu's axe, he would lose for sure. However, once he freed himself from Pangu's axe, it would be time for this stupid thing to die. Sometimes, victory or defeat, life or death, could be decided by a single thought. Pangu's attack was still a simple axe move. Once again, Gohan nimbly dodged it. Next, both the Heavenly Sword and the Doyu Sword appeared in Gohan's hands. Gohan flew directly to Pangu's face and pierced the pair of swords into the spot between Pangu's eyebrows. Clang! Following that, Gohan's swords were knocked away. Oh, looks like I was wrong. Other than this axe, there's something else that's hard enough. After all, this body is indeed Pangu's body. Seeing that the two sword ladies couldn't pierce into Pangu's body, Gohan sighed. Why don't I try using two swords? Gohan took back the Heavenly Sword and the Doyu Sword, then pulled out the Immortal Killing Sword and the Immortal Exterminating Sword, piercing the spot between Pangu's eyebrows. However, even the legendary 4 Immortal Killing Swords were tightly clamped by Pangu's muscles, and even pulling them out took Gohan a great deal of effort. Damn it, this Pangu is too hard. Hong Jun Jinni can't hurt Pangu at all. Seeing this, the group of sword-bearers said worriedly, if even Hong Jun's Sword Emperor's terrifying attack couldn't harm Pangu's body, let alone ordinary sword-bearers like them, then Pangu was truly invincible. Humans will be shrouded in Pangu's shadow for the rest of their lives. Indeed hard. This is Pangu's body. Seeing that his pair of swords failed to pierce into Pangu's body, Gohan didn't panic at all. Instead, he even showed a satisfied smile. Meanwhile, he reached out a hand and gently stroked Pangu's body, as if he was stroking a sports car that could drive any man crazy. What is Hong Jun Jinni doing? Seeing Gohan's reaction, everyone was dumbfounded. They couldn't understand what Gohan was doing at all. Disperse. Suddenly, Gohan flicked the scabbard on his body, and 12 long swords flew out of Gohan's scabbard. Finally, They stopped at 12 different positions. If one were to look carefully, they would discover that the 12 swords were positioned exactly where the 12 Du Tianzu Wu had been. In the next second, the 12 swords began to transform. The slender blades gradually transformed into slender, beautiful young ladies. In the end, the 12 young ladies with different looks, temperaments, and figures appeared in front of everyone at the same time. Oh my God, 12 sword ladies. Hongjun Jiandi is indeed as the legends say. He is a terrifying Jiandi who has 2 sword ladies at the same time. Seeing the appearance of 12 different sword mothers, the sword bearers sighed in their hearts. At the same time, from a number of 12, they realized that Guhan had to have 2 emperor sword-level sword mothers at the same time. What a terrifying fellow. He could actually have 2 emperor sword-level sword mothers at the same time. No wonder he was so terrifyingly powerful. Hey, do you guys know these sword ladies? Tell me, who are the 12 sword ladies of Hongjun Jiandi? Immediately, a curious sword-bearer asked the person next to him. I have the information here. Immediately, a sword-bearer took out his personal terminal and projected a picture. He pointed at the 12 different sword ladies in the air and explained, "Look at the shortest, lowly sword lady wearing a crocodile costume. She is Hongjun Jiandi's first sword lady. She is also an ancient sword lady, Qingpin's sword. She is currently the number 1 sword lady in the ancient sword rank." Hearing this, everyone nodded. So it was the number 1 sword lady in the ancient sword rank. No wonder she was so powerful. Only the strong could have such a powerful sword lady. However, these people did not know that Qingpin's sword's ranking had risen later on. When Qingpin's sword first appeared, it was actually the last among all the sword ladies in the ancient sword rank. That one whose expression is as calm as water, and who wears the simplest clothes, is the passing water sword of the ancient sword grade. I heard that it's a sword maiden forged by Hongjun, Sword Emperor himself. Although it doesn't have a ranking, it's definitely one of the best of the ancient sword grade. Following this person's continuous introduction, everyone finally had a better understanding of the 12 sword ladies in the air. However, this person only collected some superficial information, so everyone only had a limited understanding. As for the rest of the story, they did not know. After listening to the introduction, everyone could not help but be curious. If they had not seen wrongly, in such an intense battle, Guhan had not used his 2 emperor-level sword ladies. Instead, he had only used 2 treasure-level sword ladies. This made everyone feel strange. Why didn't Guhan use the Arch Sword and only use the treasured sword grade sword lady? Of course, everyone was even more curious. What was Guhan trying to do by releasing his 12 sword ladies? Everyone, I'm going to rest. I'll leave the rest to you. After releasing his 12 sword ladies, Guhan seemed to let out a long sigh of relief. Then, he smiled and said to the 12 sword ladies, Aya, after holding in for so long, we're finally out. I say, Guhan, you should have released us long ago. Then, you would have ended the battle long ago. We were almost suffocated in the scabbard. Celestial Extinguishing Sword said with a smile. That's right, Guhan is the most annoying. Staying in the scabbard is not fun at all. Qingpin also pouted. That's enough. You've appeared in front of everyone countless times. This is the first time you've appeared in front of everyone. Guhan, just keep them in your scabbards. If you let me out earlier, I'll at least have a chance to appear in front of everyone. A crimson sword maiden, who looked like a phoenix, said loudly with dissatisfaction. This sword lady's figure was the tallest among all the sword ladies. She was even a head taller than Guhan. She was at least 9 meters tall. Moreover, her figure was also the hottest among all the sword ladies. She had a curvaceous figure, a perfect combination of the devil and the flesh. The most unique thing about this sword maiden was probably her clothes. Her fiery red clothes were filled with drawings of mountains, rivers, grains, heaven and earth, astronomy and geography, and a series of prehistoric images. I believe that everyone has already guessed that this sword maiden is the Xianyuan sword, the ancestral sword of the human race. She has finally completed the synchronization with the solid cold and appeared in front of everyone. Is this person Pangu? He's completely different from what I imagined. The celestial extinguishing sword's frequency was completely different from the noisy Xianyuan swords. She stared deeply at Pangu, who was surrounded by them. Her eyes were filled with reverence and doubt as she muttered to herself. That's right. Is the great god Pangu this stupid thing that only knows how to hack? If the great god Pangu really looked like this, the world would still be a chaotic egg. The celestial extinguishing sword also looked at Pangu with a complicated expression. Not only the celestial extinguishing sword and the celestial slaying sword, but the celestial captivating sword and the celestial slaughtering sword also looked at the stupid Pangu with confusion and doubt. In fact, the four celestial slaying swords had very complicated feelings for Pangu. When the four celestial slaying swords appeared, Pangu had already split the world apart and used his life and flesh to forge the entire world. Therefore, the four celestial slaying swords worshipped Pangu from the bottom of their hearts. In their hearts, Pangu was like a totem and a belief. However, looking at the stupid Pangu in front of them who only knew how to hack, this feeling made the four celestial slaying swords very unhappy. It was as if the idol in their hearts had been destroyed in an instant. Don't be stupid, okay? The real Pangu is already dead. This is just a stupid thing formed by the gathering of 12 pieces of flesh and blood he left behind. It is not the real Pangu at all. While dodging Pangu's attack, Gohan said helplessly to his sword ladies, "You have all memorized the 12 divine beings' killing formation. Let's test it out now. I almost risked my life to help you fight for this opportunity." Okay, we got it. Xianyuan's sword waved his hand and shouted to all the sword ladies, "Sisters, let this stupid thing see our 12 divine beings' killing formation." 12 divine beings' killing formation. Hearing this name, all the sword bearers were stunned and asked themselves instinctively, what does Hong Jun Jiani want to do? However, these sword bearers did not need to think for too long. As soon as Xianyuan's sword's voice fell, his body changed back to the shape of a sword in an instant. The other sword ladies looked at each other and also changed back to the shape of a sword. Then, just like the reappearance of the 12 divine beings' killing formation, 12 strands of sword elements shot out from the tips of the 12 sword ladies and collided in the air. Then, these sword elements gathered together, and a huge sword the size of Pangu was slowly formed. Oh my god, Mike and Zhu, 12 sword ladies, actually merged. This time, everyone, including Lian Ling, opened their mouths wide and could not close them. No one had ever thought that the sword ladies could actually merge together, let alone 12 sword ladies at the same time. This huge sword was so simple and unadorned. There were no patterns on it, not even a hilt. Apart from its huge size, there was nothing special about it. It looked like a sword that could be bought for 10 yuan on the roadside. But at the same time, it had abandoned all decorations and complicated designs and returned to its original state, the purest and most pure sword. This was the original form of a sword. Slash. Gohan gently pushed forward with his fingertips, and the huge sword directly slashed towards Panga's body. With this slash, heaven and earth bloomed like a dream. Chapter 1463. Oh my god, I'm going to die. I'm going to die. After the strike, the Xianyuan sword let out a strange cry and fell from the sky, along with the other sword ladies. It seemed that the so-called 12 heavenly cycle sword ladies formation could only last for one strike. After that, they all disbanded. Who's your mother? She goes around calling her mother. The celestial extinguishing sword, who had also fallen, couldn't help but complain. If I had to analyze a mother, it would be Pangu. The Xianyuan sword looked up at Pangu, who was still standing in the same spot behind her. She couldn't help but stick out her tongue and say, "Damn it, I actually killed my mother. How disgraceful. Are you sure this impostor is dead?" The Heaven Reliance sword asked the Xianyuan sword as she supported her aching waist. Of course, all 12 of us are together. There's no way this impostor wouldn't be dead. the Xianyuan sword said with a pout. As if to prove what the Xianyuan sword had just said, the towering Pangu behind them instantly collapsed. It turned back into 12 bodies and fell to the ground like the sword ladies. This time, it was naturally the 12 Zhu Wus that fell. However, what was strange was that after the 12 Zhu Wus split up, they didn't turn back into their original giant forms. Instead, they became the size of a normal person and fell to the ground. Coincidentally, the 12 Zhu Wus landed right next to the sword ladies. The 24 of them were mixed together in a mess. We lost. Our Panga bodies actually lost. The 12 Zhu Wus didn't die, but they didn't look too good. Some of the Zhu Wus struggled to stand up, but they couldn't. They could only lie down and look at the sky. A few drops of tears fell from the corners of their eyes. The 12 Zhu Wus actually cried. This was something that had never happened in tens of millions of years. Even at the end of the Great Shamanyao War, the 12 Zhu Wus hadn't shed a single tear. But now, the 12th Zhu Wu was crying. He was very sad because he was beaten by Gahan. Qingpin looked at the 12 Zhu Wu who were crying beside him and said, "Useless fellas, they're actually crying. How shameless. What do you know? Our Pangu real body was defeated. The invincible ancestor Pangu was defeated. Our belief and the meaning of our existence is gone." Grand Wizard Xianming said with tears streaming down his face. The Wu people always considered themselves as descendants of Pangu and viewed Pangu as their supreme ancestor. Now that their ancestor was defeated, the 12 Zhu Wu surely could no longer control their emotions. Haven't you lost before? Didn't your Pangu real body lose to the demon race during the Great Magi Demon War? Xianyuan sword said disdainfully. It was different back then. Dijiang propped half of his body up from the ground and said, "Back then, the two idiots, Zhurong and Gonggong, were tricked by the demon race and fought a great battle. Even half of Zhu Wu's blood bead was destroyed. After that, the demon race launched a surprise attack on us. Although we managed to form the Pangu real body, because of Zhurong and Gonggong, the Pangu real body wasn't complete. It didn't even have half of its current strength. So, the one who lost wasn't Pangu, but us 12 Zhu Wu. How could it be the same? Huh, that means the 12 of us are even more awesome than the demon race's heavenly court back then." Xianyuan's sword said proudly. "Who are you? How can you form the same team as us? And how can you easily break our Pangu real body? Who are you?" Gomong asked the sword maidens while panting heavily. "Of course we are sword maidens. Don't you know who we are after fighting us for so long?" Heavenly Sword rolled his eyes at the 12 Zhu Wu. "Yes, you are sword maidens. We were defeated by sword maidens." Gomong looked up into the sky and sighed. Then he looked at the 12 sword maidens around him and could not help but say, "Speaking of which, it's strange. What kind of existences are you sword maidens? Why are there things like sword maidens in this world?" With Gomong's words, the sword maidens were at a loss. That's right. Why did sword maidens exist in this world? They couldn't figure it out either. Their existence is reasonable. If you want to doubt the existence of sword maidens, then you should first question your own existence. Why did you come to our world? At that moment, Gohan floated down from the sky and landed beside the group. He looked at the 12 Zhu Wu who were unable to get up on the ground. This was the first time Gohan was looking at these once lawless existences that ruled over the entire Earth from a level perspective. "You win. We are defeated." Upon seeing Gohan appear, Zhu Wu Dijiang said directly. As for the other Zhu Wu, they lowered their noble heads, acknowledging their defeat at the hands of a human like Gohan. "Is that so? Since you've already admitted defeat, I can send you on your way. Pay the price for your crimes." Gohan beckoned with his hand. Qingpin, who had been playing dead on the ground, instantly flew into Gohan's hand and transformed back into a sword maiden. The other sword maidens also transformed back into sword maidens and floated beside Gohan. Their sharp blades shimmered with blinding light. This was also the last light the 12 Zhu Wu saw. "We have lost. We deserve to die." Dijiang nodded, seeming to accept his own death very much. He didn't have the slightest fear or resistance. He just asked Guhan with a faint look of doubt on his face. How did you dodge the attack of the real body of Pangu? How did you break through the defense of the real body of Pangu? I wonder if you can answer our questions before you die. Zhu Dijiang looked at Gohan and asked very seriously, What if I don't answer you? What will you do? Gohan asked back. We will die with everlasting regret, Dijiang said with certainty. So even Zhu Wu knows how to make cold jokes. Gohan couldn't help but laugh. The reason why you Pangu can make me lose all ability to dodge is because the Pangu you created has mastered all the rules in the world. At the same time, you have controlled all the rules in the world and shrunk them to a point. That's why I can't dodge and can only let your Pangu attack me. Right? Yes. Dijiang nodded, acknowledging Guhan's words. Then he said, But how did you break through all the rules in the world? As far as I know, it's only possible to not be bound by all the rules in the world unless you reach the realm of the sage and transcend the world. But I can see that you are still a human. You haven't reached the realm of the sage, and you haven't transcended the world. You can't break through the shackles of Pangu. I don't understand this, so I die with everlasting regret. Fine, I'll show you for Pangu's sake. After thinking for a while, Gohan suddenly reached out his right hand to Dijiang and opened his entire right palm. Dijiang was stunned when he saw what was in Gohan's right hand. He clearly saw a small sword blossoming in Gohan's hand. It looked no different from an ordinary sword. Dijiang could break countless swords like this with one breath. The only surprising thing was that the sword seemed to grow out of Gohan's palm. It wasn't just being held in Gohan's hand. You mean, this is the sword that defeated us? Defeated Pangu? Dijiang looked at the sword and said in a daze, What sword is this? Is it the legendary 4 immortal killing swords? No, just the 4 immortal killing swords can't break the real body of Pangu. Get this straight. That sword isn't the 4 immortal killing swords. The real 4 immortal killing swords are here. Look carefully. Immortal extinguishing sword in sword form suddenly said discontentedly. Pangu above, this is the real immortal extinguishing sword. Emperor Jiang looked up and was shocked to find that the sword that had just spoken was indeed the real 4 fairy killing swords. Others might not recognize the 4 fairy killing swords, but as the 12 ancestors of sorcery from the untainted land, how could they not recognize the sword that originated from Pangu's axe? Soon, Dijiang found that not only the immortal extinguishing sword, but the other 3 immortal killing swords, immortal trapping sword, and immortal slaughtering sword were also floating beside Gohan. Gohan, this human, had gathered all the 4 immortal killing swords. As you can see, the sword in my hand isn't the 4 immortal killing swords. Gohan said with a smile, and Dijiang's gaze returned to the small sword in Gohan's hand. After a closer look, Dijiang found that this small sword was the one that had cut Pangu's body in half. But that huge sword had shrunk to an extremely small size, floating in Gohan's hand. If this sword isn't the 4 immortal killing swords, then what is it? Is there a sword stronger than the 4 immortal killing swords in this world? Dijiang asked in confusion. I think you know very well that there's no sword stronger than the 4 immortal killing swords in this world. Gohan shook his head and sighed. To be honest, in terms of pure strength, this sword isn't even as strong as the plastic sword I bought for 10 yuan by the roadside. Then why? You said it before, as long as I'm still in this world, I'll be bound by the rules of the world, and I won't be able to escape Pangu's axe. But this sword is different. It doesn't come from this world. At this point, Gohan couldn't help smiling proudly. This is my sword, the first sword that belongs to my world. Chapter 1464. Your sword? The first sword in your world? Ancestral sorcerer Emperor Jiang, along with the other 11 ancestral sorcerers, couldn't help but tremble. Then he looked at Gohan in a daze. Could it be that you've already reached that step? Don't tell me you can already create your own world. You can say yes, but you can also say no, or just a small step. Gohan shook his head slightly and said, I've only created a sword, nothing else. I'm still far from that realm. That's already very impressive. Zhu Wu Dijiang nodded and said with an extremely admiring expression, "This is a realm that even sages pursue. You're not a sage yet, but you've taken a step further than sages in this world. You may become the new Pangu of the world in the future. How can there be such a terrifying human like you in this world? It's not embarrassing for us, the 12 Zhu Wus, to be defeated by you. Actually, I have to thank you all." Gahan smiled and said, "Actually, before the battle with you all, I didn't even know what my own world was. Thanks to the battle with you all, I finally saw where my future path is." "Is that so?" The 12 Zhu Wu smile became even more bitter. It felt like he had sent him down a brand new path. "Oh yes, since you all have become the native Zhu Wus of this world, then lend me your Zhu Wu's blood beads." Gahan changed the topic and said, "You want our Zhu Wu's blood beads?" The 12 Zhu Wus were shocked again and then looked at Gahan with some doubt and asked, "Aren't you afraid that you'll be reborn in our body like that idiot Zheng? If you have the ability, then I welcome you to be reborn." Gohan smiled, and the 12 swords floating around him displayed 12 sword chi at the same time. The 12 Zhu Wu's bodies were instantly torn into pieces, leaving only 12 Zhu Wu's blood beads floating around Gahan. "Return." With a shake of the sword energy in Guhan's hand, the 12 ancestral witches' blood beads were all put into Guhan's dimensional pocket. At the same time, the people in the void felt that the seal on the void had disappeared without a trace. Then the 12 void gates reopened. The humans who had been hiding in the void for 4 to 5 hours could finally walk out of the world of the void and once again stand on the ground of Yuzhong City. Although Yuzhong City had completely disappeared, leaving behind only a sand dune pressed down by the rules. Everything in Yuzhong City, be it steel, plastic, houses, cars, flesh, or plants, had all been crushed into sand by the extreme rules. Everything in Yuzhong City had disappeared. "Master." In the next moment, Lu Shihua appeared beside Gahan with Long Xiaoya and Gu Fan. Gahan's body fell back just in time, and Lu Shihua caught him in time, preventing him from falling to the ground. "Master." Seeing Gohan's incomparably weak appearance, Lu Shihua could not help but cry. "Silly child. What's there to cry about? Master is tired. Let me sleep." Gohan muttered weakly, then directly closed his eyes and fell into a deep sleep, completely handing over his body to Lu Shihua. It must be known that Gohan's behavior was a little too bold. It must be known that Gahan had just killed Lu Shihua's younger brother, so he was not afraid that Lu Shihua would kill him to avenge his brother. When Gohan woke up from his coma, it was said that it was already 3 days later. If Lian Ling had not poured the remaining soul moon into Gahan's mouth after discovering that his soul had been greatly depleted, it was estimated that Gahan would have slept for another half a month or so. During the days that I was asleep, the situation was normal, right? No Yuan Ko came to stir up trouble, right? Gahan touched his slightly weak forehead and asked Lian Ling, who was beside him. There were, but they were all Yuan Ko who did not have eyes and did not even have basic intelligence. They were easily dealt with by the other sword bearers, and I did not even have the chance to attack. Lian Ling replied with a sigh. As for those powerful Yuan Ko, the news of you killing the 12 Zhu Wu and even the real body of Panga by yourself has already spread throughout the world. It is said that the people in the heavenly court were so frightened that they called back all their Yuan Ko outside, and then tightly shut the gates of the heavenly court. They do not even dare to step out, let alone cause trouble for us. That's good. Hearing Lian Ling's words, Gohan also heaved a sigh of relief. Actually, these 3 days are the time when I am the weakest. If they come to cause trouble for me at this time, I might really die in their hands. Don't worry, as long as I'm still alive, you will not die. Lian Ling inadvertently said something that touched Gohan greatly. What about Yuzhong City? What's the situation there? Gohan asked again. Not good. It's terrible. Lian Ling shrugged and said, because of the battle between you and the 12 Zhu Wu, the distorted rules have turned the entire Yuzhong City into ruins and sand dunes. The 400 million people do not even have a decent tool in their hands. It is almost like they have returned to the primitive era. If it were not for the food stored in our dimensional pockets, people would have starved to death. Then, is there any hope for Yuzhong City to recover? Gohan asked again. The only hope is Yuzhong City's superdimensional wall system. Because it is buried deep underground, it did not suffer much from the distortion of the rules. After digging it up and repairing it, it should be able to continue to be used. But if Yuzhong City wants to be rebuilt, it will take at least 10 years. All the modern equipment has been destroyed. If Yuzhong City wants to be rebuilt now, I am afraid we can only rely on digging shovel by shovel. Liu Ling replied. Sigh. It was me who harmed Yuzhong City. This city left behind by Yi Qingping. I didn't expect it to be destroyed in my hands. Gohan sighed deeply. As Gohan's mother, Yuzhong City was definitely the most important existence in Gohan's life. It was the place that Gohan always remembered to come out of the seamless corridor to protect. The dramatic result was that Yuzhong City was destroyed in the battle between Gohan and the 12 Zhu Wu. In fact, at the moment the battle began, Gohan had already expected such a result, but there was no other way. Since the battlefield was here, Yuzhong City was doomed. This is not a place to stay for long. Go to Long Shi Jindi immediately and ask him to arrange for everyone to be transferred to Yanjing City immediately. I've been to Yanjing City before and found that most of the city is still in good condition. About 80% of the buildings and equipment are still there. As long as the superdimensional wall system is repaired, Yanjing City should be able to return to its normal state in a month or two, and the lives of the 400 million people will be guaranteed. Gohan suggested to Liu Ling, I know, you have so many things to worry about. You have already become like this, but you still care about these things. Liu Ling knocked on Gohan's head. You don't need to tell us about this. We all know. Lu Shihua has already taken 10,000 sword-bearers to clean up Yanjing City. While repairing the superdimensional wall system, they will also clean up the Yuan Ko who entered Yanjing City. As for us, we will migrate the remaining humans to Yanjing City, but the speed will probably be very slow. Apart from a super hovercraft in the sword-bearer's dimensional pocket, we have almost lost all means of transportation. It is estimated that it will take at least 3 months for all the survivors to reach Yanjing City. I am afraid it will be another bloody day on the way. 10,000 sword-bearers are enough to clean up Yanjing City. It is obvious that the migrating humans here need more protection. Although Yanjing City does need an Emperor Sword level sword-bearer to hold the line, using Lu Shihua is a bit too wasteful. Let Long Shi Jindi be in charge of the migration and restoration of Yanjing City, and let Lu Shihua protect this place. Gohan immediately said, Moreover, in Yanjing City, he can lie down and rest. There is no need for continuous action, which is more conducive to the recovery of Long Shi Jindi's body. Hearing Gohan's words, Liu Ling's face immediately sank. Her lips moved up and down for a while, but she finally sighed and said, His Majesty Long Shi Jindi has already soared to heaven. Even if you want him to rest again, you have no chance. Gohan was also silent. Although he had a premonition that Long Shi Jindi might not live for long, he did not expect that when he opened his eyes, Long Shi Jindi had already soared to heaven. How did Long Shi Jindi leave? When did he leave? Gohan asked with a pained expression. You can rest assured that he was very happy when he left. Liu Ling said faintly. He watched you defeat 12 Zhu Wu with his own eyes, saw humans return to reality, and then soared to heaven with a smile on his face. When he left, he did not have any regrets. That's good too. Gohan nodded. To be able to leave without any regrets was in itself a great fortune. Sigh. The old generation of Emperor Sword level sword-bearers have already left. Fortunately, the new generation of Emperor Sword level sword-bearers has been born. With you and Shihua here, humans still have a future. Liu Ling said faintly. Are you missing a person? Gohan looked at Liu Ling with some surprise. Are you talking about me? Liu Ling looked down at her old hands. I am already a person with half my body buried in the ground. Maybe tomorrow I will soar to heaven with His Majesty's long Shurjindi. What does this future have to do with me? No. Have you forgotten? I've said it before. I can return your youth to you. Gohan smiled slightly, and then once again spread out his right hand. The small sword that grew in Gohan's hand swayed in the wind like a tenacious weed. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.